Welcome to the ACORP meeting. We are sitting in the big room now, and we are being recorded and broadcast over the World Wide Web, which is a new directive. And so before we start, I want to remind all members that if they speak, their microphone has to be on, and then the red light in front of them is bright red light. If you a little bit red. And for housekeeping, we have water over there. Lunch will come at 11:30 or so, box lunch, and we keep on with the meeting. And for our visitors, there's a sign-in sheet, and you have some material, also the handouts, if you like, over there. With that, Dr. Curl, would you like to open the meeting?
Well, I think the first order of business is electing a new chair and a new vice chair.
Well, agenda item A is welcome and introductions.
Okay, welcome to everybody.
And we have a new member, so maybe we should introduce each other. I'm Reinhold Cornelius. I'm with the coordinating board.
I'm Stacy Silverman. I'm interim assistant commissioner for the Workforce, Academic Affairs, and Success Division at the coordinating board.
I'm Ren Cleveland. Guess I've been on this panel for almost 20 years now. So I was retired from Texas Instruments and now work for consulting with a couple of smaller companies.
I'm Angela Wilson. I'm a Regents Professor at University of North Texas and Director of the Center for Advanced Scientific Computing and Modeling there.
I'm Dale Cherry. I'm a program specialist here with the program.
Ramanan Krishnamurthy from the University of Houston, and I have a new title, which is sort of strange for an academic place. I'm the Chief Energy Officer. So.
And I'm Betty Sue Masters, and I don't think I've been on quite as long as Ren, but almost. I'm a Welch Professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. And I keep hoping this committee will be doing more and more.
I'm Robert Curl, and I'm a retired professor of chemistry at Rice University. So who's in charge?
You're in charge.
You have to have this. We have. That's the welcome and introduction.
Yes, and now we can go to the second agenda item B. Typically, once every year, the ACORP elects its chair and co-chair, and since this is the first meeting for the year, that's first on the agenda.
Thank you, in charge.
We need a nomination from the members, a motion for a nomination and motion for electing a chair.
I would like to renominate Dr. Robert Curl as chair of this committee. He's done a wonderful job in the past few years, and he's been very active with the legislature, and I think we need to keep that momentum going.
I would second that nomination.
Okay, then we can vote on that. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now we need to elect a vice chair in the same fashion.
Let me go ahead and nominate Betty again for this job. She's done a fantastic job working with Robert on this, and I think she would serve us well. So.
Second that.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I'm.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so
Thank you.
now we have to consider the summary notes. I didn't really see anything. Did anybody see anything in the summary notes that needed correction?
On page 7, NHARP has got a typo, but C7. So.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I did this online last night, so I wasn't able to make the changes. So there are several little pluralizations and so on that need to be taken care of, and I'll look at those and give them to you later. Factual information is fine as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. So do we need to have motion, or do we have to
Yes, we need to have a motion to
approve with minor topographical corrections? Right. So
So moved.
okay, second.
I'll second. So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, the statutory changes, the only thing I noticed was that apparently the Higher Education Coordinating Board is no longer going to do the research assessment program for these
special item funding.
special items in the budget.
Right. There was the agency went through sunset this biennium, and there was a sunset bill, Senate Bill 215, and one section in the bill, Section 62, repealed the entire research assessment program, which was done every 2 years, external review of special item funding, and from the minutes, remember that last year we discussed how to proceed on that, but that is mute now. We don't do it anymore. The other change, which is not directly impacting you as advisory committee, is a change to the Research Development Fund, which House Bill 870 now allows peer review A&M to participate, and so they took part this summer for the first time in the review of restricted research expenditures. And the third change, which is impacting you the most, is a change to the Norman Hackerman Advanced Research Program, and basically it merged the Advanced Research Program with the Advanced Technology Program. And we printed out in these materials the statute and the rules, and we color-coded the portions of the new statute that is for the Advanced Technology Program in green, and the basic research wording that came from the old statute is in blue, and you see it's just strung together or intermingled. There's one change in wording from the old statute now, and that is on page D4, section 142 for funding F, and that is new in that somebody has to decide how the money can be spent. It used to be that in the Appropriation Act, NHARP and ATP was separated. It's not anymore. It's just one item. And so the advisory committee, ACORP, can decide how to expend the funds under each of those programs. Following the pages of the statute is the rules, and we did some minor cleanup of the rules for NHARP accordingly, but the rules were never separated into parts, so no big changes were necessary since there was no substantial change in the statute.
Reynold, can you clarify for me what is this issue in section 142.009 on D4 about clean coal?
At some biennium, that was put in as wording, as optional or possible research topic. I think it's not the only one. There's also wording about border issues.
Yeah, there's water. I saw something about water.
Yeah.
So there's no special money for this clean coal project, is that right?
No.
So that is if there's a request for research regarding this issue, then we should judge whether it's deemed appropriate to be funded. Is that a appropriate interpretation of that? Not demanding that it be funded, but it's saying that we can determine whether it qualifies to be funded. Is that correct?
I don't see this section right now. That's what I recall, but I don't see it.
It's D4 at the bottom. We're talking about
D4.
coal. I don't know about the water.
Oh, applied research for clean coal project. Right. I understand it's like the other research topics which are listed earlier in the statute.
So I'll chime in on that one. It is one category that you all may consider as identifying so that the program could target funding in that direction. But it's not something that is currently a priority.
Okay.
And not a requirement.
All right. So not a lot has changed, is that correct?
Right, except that ATP and ARP, as we knew it, are now together, and if we had a lot of money available, that would be nice for you to work with.
The deployment, well, I can't remember the acronym now, but the one for translating into jointly with industry.
TDT, that was always part of ATP, so that's actually that hasn't changed. It was just a subset of type of award under ATP, which had special restrictions.
Okay. Okay. Any other? Let's see. So the changes in the law we've been discussing go through D4, and then the changes starting on D5 or the essentially the rearrangement, I guess, of the previous policy of the Higher Education Coordinating Board.
Right, those are our rules, which haven't really changed, except for minor cleanups, numbering, etc. But the rules were never split into two different parts, so they really haven't changed at all.
Okay.
If they've merged, is there a reason to have subchapter C and D anymore?
Subchapter
on D6 and D7, the ATP and the TDT programs are described. They've all merged with the NHARP.
Well, I think they're still trying to keep some. You're trying to keep some distinction between these.
Right. The programs are still distinct, and that's why that red section is there, F, that you could decide which one is which. And yes, there's a great amount of overlap in the rules because they're handled very similar, but I believe there's also some distinction, especially for evaluation criteria.
DDT is, of course, requires putting industrial money into it. So
Right, and that's that's in rules as a separate chapter too.
I guess we should remind ourselves about section 14.74. We're not supposed to disclose anything with respect to the people's proposals. Okay.
Right, and that's part of every reviewer's contract.
And this also applies to us as well.
Yes. And, well, everybody.
If I could comment, I think, speaking of reviewers, I think they're to be congratulated for doing this job, despite the fact that some of them realize how crimped the program has become, and they have been very conscientious about doing this. And I don't know, I know we give them honoraria, but that's a lot of work for such a small program. But I hope we can keep the enthusiasm up.
I had one question about the agenda that occurred to me too late in the game. The report of the Merit Review Committee is due before January. It's probably due in November or something like that, really, isn't it? It has to go, the merit review for the NHARP program?
It's actually part of agenda item H, the merit review, because it's it will come up again next year. We had a merit.
You said something about odd number. Oh, that's.
We had a merit review which we did last year, and I have copies of it here, which I was planning to give you when we discuss the agenda for next year.
I thought I saw something about odd numbered years somewhere.
Well, it's due in January of 15, so we have to hold it in 14.
Right. So it's due in time for the next legislative session, right?
Right, that's why it is planned that way. It's in front of the session.
I was confused, thank you. So, are we ready to move on from agenda item D? Nobody's objecting to moving on. So, let's go talk about the timeline.
Yeah. So that's an important part for today's meeting, because we did get $1 million in appropriation for NHARP for the next biennium. So it's the same amount we had last biennium. And the timeline I put in here is a draft. It's very similar to last biennium's. Time-wise, it's a little bit less constrained, because we had approval from the board already last April that we can go ahead with an RFA. That is on page E2. It was an agenda item on April 25th, and so we are allowed to go ahead with an RFA as soon as we establish it.
Okay. So.
And
so that will have to be redrafted to incorporate the new merger.
Right. We have to redraft the RFA according to the guidelines you'll hammer out now. And so I just start with a timeline that we envision, again, something like pre-proposal, full proposal review, which always has happened for NHARP, with the reviews in the middle, and then by the beginning of May, end of April, beginning of May, you would meet again to look at the outcome of the review. And we will inform the board in July at their board meeting. And with this scenario, the new grants would start the next fiscal year, September 1, and then have a chance to go for 2 years. From September 1, 14 to August 31st, 2016.
So could I ask why you refer to it as NHARP 2013 if it's in 2014? That's traditional nomenclature. We have used the year of appropriation as the year for the competition. Okay. And so it has all shifted historically a little bit for all the reasons we know, but we keep doing it that way, otherwise everybody gets horribly confused. Okay.
So when you, planning on posting sometime in early September or sometime in, looks like early September, the request for proposals, right? And then they have
right.
They have 6 weeks from the middle of September on to get their pre-proposal in.
Right. We have to have some time between publicizing the RFA and the submission deadline for the pre-proposal. And last time we had a notice of intent in between. There is no requirement for time because the notice of intent is just letting us know that somebody wants to do it, and there's no obligation that they actually put something in. It was just very nice for us to have, for planning purposes, what is the upper limit.
So they have and the panel has 6 weeks to review the pre-proposals and 8 weeks to make their final decisions. So there are a lot more proposals to see, but a lot of work with the full proposals.
The full proposal, it's actually, the full proposal is always in 2 parts because the reviewers work first for themselves and then they meet in panel meetings. And so that's why this timeline is overlapping. And it's a matter of scheduling availability, and reviewers can still look at their proposal in private till they meet actually at last biennium online to discuss it as a panel. Last biennium we had all these a little bit tighter, and it was 5 weeks and was quite tight. So I tried to come up with a scheme to give 6 weeks, and there's always some buffer involved. As you see, there's a week in between because we have to do our administrative functions of making sure everything is okay with the reviews. And you have to work around holidays and breaks. Especially New Year's, Christmas, New Year's is. So according to this schedule, this would fall outside of that. The reason we have a little bit more time is that we don't necessarily need to go to the committee from the board, which is before the board meeting. If you have to do that, then you need a long time period to get everything routed and approved. If we just want to update the board in July, we don't need quite as much time.
Okay.
So do you try to schedule the reviewers sort of first and then work backwards? Because it seems to me that's the key thing, is to getting the best reviewers and making sure that you can really get a review panel together by April, getting them to commit the time, and then...
Well, actually,
by the 7th of November.
we will see. It depends on how we run
right. I was looking at the yellow one. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
It will depend on how we run the competition, which we haven't worked out yet. But typically, we have to establish the timeline. This is a draft, but we have to work out the timeline firm, because otherwise we can't tell the reviewer, this is the time you have to do it. And then, yes, if somebody doesn't have time in April, we can't take them.
Well, does anybody see any problems with the timeline? Any problems with the timeline? So we would like to...
The first, I guess, end of August and 1st of September, you're doing the RAF?
Yes, yes. Our request for application, it's called now.
So we have to decide today what's going to be funded?
Yes.
Yes, we do. We do.
Yes, that's the next agenda item, to give us guidelines about that.
Yeah, today, so.
Right, right. That's the purpose, the main purpose of the meeting. And then once we have that, we spring into action and change the old RFA to make it fit the new.
Yeah, it's mostly a matter of replacing what the subjects are.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what you discuss. Yeah, if we go on to agenda item F, which is the consideration agenda item. So in the end, you will vote on your guidelines for us. On the first page, F1.
Yes, we're all in agreement with the timeline. Do we need a formal motion?
No, it was a discussion item.
All right. So I think we're in agreement about what the timeline should be. So this is what in item F is the main purpose of this meeting.
Right.
So
I guess my comment was previously, in the previous session or a couple of these, we went through usually one meeting, just sort of describing where we wanted to go, and then followed up with the next meeting. But we're doing all that today in one meeting. Right. We have to have a final agreement on what we're going to fund.
Right.
well, the areas.
So we did this over 2 or 3 meetings.
The areas of funding, or maybe, it's either the areas of funding or you could
Get the timeline here.
you could change the criterion to point in career, but I don't know. I'm not offering that up. I mean, it could either be scholarly research areas for funding or some other change to. I mean, the basic problem is that with the $1 million, if all areas are open, the probability of being successful is less than 1%. Well, even with the pre-proposals, it's well less than 1%. With the full proposals, it's somewhat better. So, remember last time what we did was home in on the essentially cell biology, biochemistry, and genetics, I guess, all lumped together.
Right. So on page F1 is a little summary of what you had decided on how we ran NHARP 2011. To summarize real quickly, you had 2 research areas: molecular biology, cellular biology, genetics, and on the other hand, material science, nanoscience. and they were funded at equal amounts, 50-50 split, with some money taken out for administration and merit review. And with that low funding level, you put restrictions on the awards. So the maximum award amount was limited to 80,000. That allowed 12 awards. There was the undergraduate student support required, which is by statute and which becomes more important a deal if the grants are small. No faculty salary, and no awards exclusively for capital equipment.
With regard to this required cost sharing, did we have that before?
I don't recall that, and that's in fact one of the questions I was going to raise.
You had to require it. It's very loosely worded, because it was worded in a way that they had to look for third-party funding, but there was no guarantee that that would come through.
They were encouraged to apply for external grants, and I think that was the idea. If it was an early career award, you didn't want them to just rest on their laurels. You wanted them to actually go and leverage this money.
Right.
And so that was, but it was not a requirement, I think.
Well, it
was encouraged.
They were sort of wanted them required to look for money elsewhere.
Right.
Now the federal government, at least some of the program directors I've dealt with, were deathly afraid that there would be two federal grants that it sounded like the same work, because they would be sure that they'd be called before Congress and asked to explain, why did you fund this grant that somebody else was funding? But I don't think that applies. They don't think that the federal government cares how much money you can get from state governments or from private sources for a particular area of work. So I don't think there's any conflict with them going to a federal agency and looking for money for exactly. They could probably is almost a very similar, if not exactly the same proposal, and I think it would be ethical, because you're not going to run a program on $80,000.
I guess what I think I share Raman's concern here is this. It says required, and we're talking about young people. They're not going to necessarily have that option. They may have some setup money from the institution, but very few of them will have a grant already. That's part of what I thought we were doing here.
No, that's not what it is.
It's just bad, perhaps badly, slightly badly.
Yeah, maybe you need to explain it more carefully about what this is.
It's a requirement for third-party funding application. So it's
the word application is.
I didn't bring the old RFA. Maybe we can get it to you, because it's a paragraph or bullet which says if you get this award, you have to try for third-party money.
And that's fine.
Right,
because,
right.
Yes,
and it's almost a given for NHARP, and has been always like that.
Where is it? This is what the people that are going to write proposals?
No, that's I didn't bring the old RFA. We can bring it down. And
probably should look at how that's worded, because it's important that they apply for additional funds. I agree, but it's sort of you don't want them to think that they have to have additional funds in order to.
No, they don't have to have money sitting on the table. They have to agree that they will use this as a seed funding, basically.
Well, actually, the federal government is doing that now with fellowship applications. They're asking the students and postdocs to write a grant while they have funding as a fellow, you know. Mm-hmm. So this is, I think this keeps the enterprise going. Thank you.
Okay, we might want to look at the wording carefully. It's after lunch or something, or during lunch. Okay.
And so you had award restrictions as discussed now, but you also had restrictions on eligibility of faculty. And basically what was new for last time was that it was open only to early career principal investigators. That is non-tenured or non-tenured tenure track professors employed at the university not less than 2 years and not more than 5 years. And you know, we had one case where somebody submitted an application who had been employed less than 2 years and couldn't receive them.
But I thought research professors would also, research faculty were also allowed to apply. I guess there should be a non-tenured or tenure track rather than.
Yes, research professors also could apply, couldn't
right. So it should be just non-tenured, tenure track.
May I add a comment? I just wanted to provide some clarification. I pulled up the RFA from our website, and we can get you guys copies of the one that was published in 2011. Actually, the cost sharing states that each principal investigator awarded a grant is required to submit an application for additional research funding from a funding source other than the coordinating board. The additional funding should enhance the scope of the NHARP-funded project. The additional submission must be made during the NHARP grant period as defined in subsection 2.3.1, and it must be reported on all applicable progress and final reports. So hopefully that provides clarification.
I think with going back, okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Stacy. That's quite adequate explanation of what's required. Going back to non-tenured and tenured track, this is a tough problem. That is, we I think that the way it's the question is, how should this be worded? I think that the way this non-tenured tenure track professor is okay, the way it's worded is okay. That's clearly so far excluding research faculty. I think one could add something like, and research faculty at the same point in their careers. So in other words, yes, research faculty, or if they're at the same point, the 2 to 5 year window, but I'm somewhat reluctant to put non-tenured instead of research faculty, because a lot of the non-tenured or really not research people.
Can you read that definition too?
Bob, if I might comment on that. I'm seeing a big trend these days. The word tenure has less and less meaning, and it seems to me that the institutions are really going toward having more research level people to do this. Now, we're we're presuming that our reviewers are going to judge only the highest quality, and if these folks don't measure up, then they won't measure up. But I would say that we maybe should give them a chance to do this, and some of these people will become tenure track people. I'm just commenting that I'm seeing trends. I don't necessarily condone them, but the opportunities maybe should be there.
Being a professor at a medical school is a hunting license for
exactly
for its salary.
Yeah. And that's been one of the problems. Yes, it's expanded our budgets.
But this restriction of no faculty salary, of course, makes it. Well, they need money for their research too. So we just add to this to non-tenured, tenure track professor and research faculty at the same point in their career. The same kind in Texas for 2 to 5 in Texas for 2 years to become eligible, and within the period between 2 and 5. Now, this 2 and 5 business.
So can I interject here? It says in the previous award, the RFA, it says an early career PI is defined as a non-tenured tenure track faculty member or a research professional, not including postdocs, students, research assistants, associates, or instructors.
What's already there?
And so it's already in place, and I think we don't need to recreate.
We don't need to worry
the
about
verbiage.
it.
Just so you all know, I do have copies of this coming down, so hopefully they'll be down here really quickly. Thanks.
And it's quite definite about as a pre-proposal submission date. That's defining the time.
One other question on that section. It says employment at current institution. You just mentioned in Texas. Is that
I guess that's true, yeah. It says current institution.
that clarified in the?
At the institution. It says at the institution, not in the state.
Yeah. So they have to be in the current institution 2 years.
So from an eligible institution who has been
another, they're
employed
ineligible.
at that institution in that capacity for not less than 2 years and not more than 5 years.
Well, if they do switch institutions during that time, then they're not eligible. I think that's
Or become eligible again. Yeah, it's
2 years.
At some point it becomes difficult to keep, to make it measurable or to look at somebody and see if they're eligible.
Then it raises a question, if they're in a system, is that in the same institution, or is that if they change schools within the system, is that?
Right. We are aware of these difficulties. At the time we played through all sorts of scenarios because people, early career, they can come from somewhere else, and so on. But it's basically, I think, as it was used, it's a compromise of manageability and targeting the people you like to see. Now, like that person who wasn't eligible for that award, that was very unfortunate, I personally thought, because, but that's, we have to go by some definition, otherwise it's not.
Well, I'm just wondering if this is just the definition, or is it different in the?
No.
Yeah, sorry.
There was never a word about Texas. It was always the institution. And we looked at it as institution. It wasn't said system. It was
School.
Yes, institution is the university.
One, not a system.
Right.
So the way the wording says, it definitely says non-tenured faculty, right?
Non-tenured tenure track faculty member or a research professional.
Who's been, okay, that seems to be all right. Any other comments about?
I would, if we're looking at the forthcoming call, I would add that no previous recipient be eligible for this, in this competition. Just to make sure that we have a new pool of people that we can look at.
Right, and actually, in following that, since we're viewing this as seed money, I'm wondering if we should, I know a lot of the junior faculty are having more difficulty getting funding these days, even, from federal sources, and so I'm wondering if perhaps we should preclude, not include faculty who have gotten NSF Career Awards, other type of young investigator awards. I mean, I had one of those, and I certainly would advocate focusing on ones who have not received these awards to try to make sure we have more in the population in the lower ranks getting some seed money.
My reaction is I prefer winners to losers. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's, in other words, if people have been successful in getting other funding, I don't really want to make them ineligible, there.
I think it depends on the pool. If you have a sufficient pool to get good research, that's one thing. But if you don't, then I would agree with you. I would not preclude that.
I mean, it's, it gets very tough. The reason the 2 years is in there is because most people get quite adequate startup money for that. They don't begin to feel the pinch until they start seeing it going out the door. So the 2 years is sort of, okay, you should have enough startup money to live for 2 years, and this is a chance to. There's sort of the valley of death where your startup money is disappearing and you don't have adequate funding for your program.
I think you have to think about the future of the program, too. I think if you start diluting the work too much down the road, it's very hard to say, yeah, we've done excellent work, we're doing great things, but this program, we need more funding. Mm-hmm. I think you start diluting it too much and the work doesn't become very needed and so forth. I think it's a risk.
I like the idea of people in this program. There's so little money. I like the idea that people who've gotten an award from this once don't get a repeat, don't get another award from the same program, from this program.
I want you all to think about the idea that you're going to be focusing on the different topics as well. So that may limit that pool without having to explicitly limit those particular investigators. So if you change the focus from nanotechnology, or I can't recall what they were last time around, to something else, you will see a different pool of investigators.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Well, the other thing I would like to say is that I don't think we're in a danger in this climate of funding, especially with the limited funds we have, of funding anything that's not at the top. I mean, we're having that problem at the federal level. They're discriminating and scoring and things like that. There's so much good research that's not going, is being unfunded. And I'm not concerned about that right now. I'm concerned that we, have as many people, and I think, Angela, that's probably what you were getting at, more people being supported than was possible if the rich get richer. And I have to say that in my experience on this committee, we have had, when you look at, and we don't have that information in front of us now, but if we looked at where the funds went in the past, that a lot of times it did go to the rich, and it wasn't being spread around. Again, I agree with you, Bob, that we have to have competitive people who are going to be successful. So I think we agree about that.
And Stacy, what we plan to do, I think, is to make sure we really probably should just look at all the proposal pressure and make sure that the success rate, we probably should aim for a success rate of 20%. Yeah. So we should
We're certainly far.
we could look at the previous, number of proposals that we reached, that we had, and try to, in different areas, whatever areas we decide on, and try to arrange it so that the chance of success is 20% for the full proposal, not for the pre-proposals. Be less than that. Is that, I don't know whether that's a reasonable target or not. I lived in the glorious days when there was about a 40% chance. That doesn't happen anymore. Anyway, if you look at, so we have these very detailed explanation of what's happened in the past. The last time we funded biological sciences, molecular biogenetics, I believe, is the way it probably worded, and material science, nanoscience. And so a lot of the pressure is in the biological sciences because there's just a lot of pressure in the biological sciences for funding. We probably should have a discussion about what we're going to do. Personally, I'm inclined not to repeat with molecular biogenetics and material science and nanoscience. I think we have to give the other folks a chance. And so the issue is how that should be. There's considerable proposal pressure in engineering all other. There's considerable proposal pressure in biological sciences all other. I don't know exactly what that means. I assume that it means ecology and population genetics. And I'm surprised that there was that much pressure in those areas. I'm wondering if people were doing molecular science, biology somehow or another, got their proposal casted into the area of biological sciences, all other.
Wouldn't that be also things like cancer?
Yes. More general area, aging.
Yeah, aging, cancer.
Yeah, neuroscience would be, because that's now become a huge catch-all.
Fundamentally, that's all molecular.
But that's, we defined it as molecular. We sort of put that in a pocket, and then we said all other. That meant if it wasn't molecular, it went into the all other category. That's the way I interpret it. But I don't know how it actually fell out in the sorting.
How can you study Alzheimer's without it being molecular?
I'm with you, Bob, but
the people who do it
that's why we have to be careful about how we categorize these things. And that's why I might disagree with you about taking out, because there is pressure here. And my own personal bias, and I admit it's bias, it has to be molecular. So,
and given the fact that CPRIT is still functioning, I think a good reason for us not to necessarily support the cancer-related issues. And I think keeping that spirit, I think, is important. So I want to sort of go back to how we sort of conceived of this when we got to this $1 million last time and said we want to create some sort of a career award of the type of activity. I think one of the things we want to be careful about is we don't do flavor of the day type of efforts. And there is some systematic approach that we have for the investigators as they look at it as a funding stream or even as an award stream. And perhaps we need to keep that in mind. If we do engineering or materials, those distinctions are somewhat less obvious. But it also, if we start to go to really fundamental sciences, if we go for chemistry, physics, there are two issues that come about. One is that we're changing our direction, and the other is that the reviewers and selection of reviewers gets to be extremely challenging.
The second point I agree with wholeheartedly. The first point is that you don't, the point about changing your direction is that I feel that effectively this becomes not a program for everybody, but a program for special areas. The second point is really telling, the idea that, for example, if we decided that one of the areas would be all physical sciences, then, that would be chemistry, earth science, physics, and astronomy, and mathematics. Getting reviewers for those areas would be difficult. And likewise, an attractive thing to me was engineering all other. There appears to be a fair amount of proposal pressure there. You've got civil engineers, chemical engineers.
Industrial engineers, electricians.
No, the electricals were actually a separate category. And so there's a tension there between let's not keep going back to the same people all the time and permanently excluding one group of people, with the issue of how do you get adequate breadth of reviewers. I don't know. We need to think about that.
And don't we have to figure in the fact that we've now merged the two programs? So we have to have some inclusion in the, or not?
Actually, the funding is for the NHARP program, so the other program is essentially unfunded. So.
I suggest we try to cast a broader net and have a topic such as energy and the environment and something like biomedicine.
Energy and the numbers you propose: energy and the environment, and what else?
And biomedicine. Then, that will cover many different fields, and then we're not just necessarily selecting chemistry or physics or electrical engineering, and it leaves it to the proposers to really have the best proposals come forward in a multitude of areas. And perhaps, I saw the numbers of pre-proposals that were received last time, 278, that's pretty phenomenal. And one thing we could do is try to restrict the number of proposals coming forward from each university. And that might help restrict what's coming forward and really having some of the best proposals come forward.
I didn't catch one of the things you said. You said energy and environment. And what was the other one?
Biomedicine.
Biomedicine. Well, it has a nice practical flavor. It might not go over well with the people that are doing astronomy. It's the environment of Jupiter we're talking about, right?
May I comment, though, on your limiting in the institution? We've had this discussion before. And that problem was then it leaves it up to the institution to be deciding who gets to apply. And I will speak for my institution, but I don't trust them to make those decisions. And that's probably going out over the web. But I think we need to be very careful about putting that onus. We want to get these reviewers from outside the Texas. We've done that, and I think we've done it well. So let's keep up that.
I'll second what Betty said. I'm part of the administration, so I can say it now. So I don't trust administrators. Absolutely don't. So.
There's also the question how many proposals you want to fund, which I think might go hand in hand with the issue of what kind of research field or topic is being or area is being funded. In 2011, ANHRP had 2 research areas with very small awards. And the question is if that is the best model for a second year with $1 million. From the experience from last time, I see that there may be problems with that. And one is in terms of research, what kind of research is being done with $80,000. But the other one is in terms of research review of that many proposals for a small award. I think it may be quite difficult to get qualified reviewers for such a review again. When you go and try to find people who review research proposals first as a pre-proposals and then as a full proposal and then in the panel, they almost always want to know what good they do, and they ask what kind of projects are being funded, and they go out and look at our awards list and see if they're interested. And if you tell them it's for $80,000, the interest goes down considerably. And we had people who laughed at us last time when we called them up. But they did it to most part because we could tell them, well, Texas is in financial dire straits as everybody else is, and they understood it and they did it to keep the program running. I don't know what happens if you do it the second year, if you go out again and said, well, this is now business as usual, if people are interested to do the review. That's just a consideration. So from that background, the staff looked at it, or I looked at it, and thought maybe it might be better to fund a fewer amount, half as many awards, basically, but give them award funding which really could do research with it. And you do that maybe by coming up with a targeted topic, as you said, environment, water, energy, something maybe interdisciplinary, which would put another limit on proposers to come up with something new.
I see on page F5, this is sort of your right-hand column of what you were thinking about. I'm very concerned about one item in that with respect to this, and that is that this program is specifically for basic research, which is satisfy your curiosity. Okay? And if you say it's going to be for energy, that's applied research, that's directed research, right?
But they have an application. It is less curiosity driven. It is, and the type of work that I work in that area. So I look at it, and you have an equal opportunity if you take it far enough along to go to industry and get it funded. I think fundamental scientific research in today's day and age is especially hard to go to industry and get funded. And those topics, whether it's biomedicine, energy, environment, each of those, I think, go more on the applied side rather than on the basic side. And I think we need to agree on what we want to fund. Those are fine topics if we want to go the applied side more than the fundamental side.
It's hard to imagine that biomedicine is curiosity driven.
I'm not sure that it's all that basic. I mean, the ATP program, the ATD program, were both applied, and this is all merged into one program.
Which this is funding for ANHRP, not for ATP.
No, I'm saying if NHARP is now
No, it's not.
Or the merging of all of it.
It's not. We just kept the statute. There's still two separate programs. ACORP is the only one that received funding of $1 million.
But the topics in the program,
Are
Basic research.
well, I think your point is well taken. Research is developing and evolving, and what was basic is now maybe not as basic. The point.
Well, Bob, I want to say something. I feel like I'm sort of in the field of biomedicine, and I do basic research, and I have done it. You know, I'm a biochemist. So I think that we can focus that so that it says basic research in biomedicine and keep it that way. And select the reviewers that will judge it that way. So, you know, what might be a problem is then who applies. So we may have to be, you know, you can say biomedicine, but you might have to define it more tightly. And I hear what you're saying, but I think it is basic research. You can target it to basic research.
And I think the same is true for energy and environmental work. I mean, I'm in that area, and all I do is fundamental work. I do not do applied work, and so I think the same can be said.
So let me just bring up another thought, and this is a wild one. If we would, let's just take this proposal for 2013 and cutting down the number of awards. Just put it on the table for a moment. Does this not make the NHARP awards very, very exclusive? And maybe there's a good thing about that. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out as a possible thought. The Norman Hackerman Awards were established, and those have been, I think, received very well. But maybe there is a reason for considering that. I haven't really thought about this until right now, but let's consider it from that standpoint. And I'm not sure it's necessary. The award amount here is pretty high. That you've proposed, I would say.
Considering there's no overhead, the $200,000 is actually $300,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Grant.
Yeah, it is. So but we can talk about that's a nitty gritty point. But maybe the exclusiveness of the award, that this is really hard to get, and boy, this person got this award. There's some prestige in getting certain awards. I think we ought to make it more prestigious.
Actually, if we make it more prestigious, you may see even more pre-proposals.
I don't know.
But I think then it becomes harder to restrict topics, right? If it is,
yes.
If we are saying that these are the 5 best young faculty in the state of Texas, then it needs to be an open playing field, including people from the arts.
Yes.
Now, where you have the best people apply and you award them. I think that's a fine way to do it. But I don't think that's where we're going to end up with.
Well, and I'll also point out that then you are going to cut into your funding, because in order to have the panels to support that kind of a program, you're going to need to have a whole lot more in administrative funding. And we don't have that, so.
It's sort of strange situation. I've just been through the TAMIST awards problem, and it wasn't like there was a flood of nominees for that, but it is true that it's not, that kind of judgment is actually not as difficult as a scientific judgment is about who's really doing well. But I don't know if trouble is with the NHARP program, I mean, with the O'Donnell program, the numbers are all self-limiting. Like, we had, I think, 14 nominations for the science O'Donnell. And
This is Tanis.
Tanis, yeah. And you're going to have, you're going to have a situation where you're going to have a lot of people. You may have, I'm not sure this is true, you might have a situation where you're going to have a lot of people who apply in the hopes of getting, snatching the brass ring, so to speak. And I'm not sure, I don't think it's going to be, I think that if you, that's the problem I see with what you're trying to do, and Reynold, was to make it interdisciplinary or multi-PI, right? How are you going to, I'm looking at your right-hand column here, how are you going to get the number of pre-proposals down to 50?
Well, I would think if you do an interdisciplinary or multi-PI proposal with one early investigators and with a targeted topic of energy and water, you don't have that many people who would apply for it, as if you open it up to molecular biology in all of Texas. It's just, I don't see that.
I beg to differ. And then, if you open it to energy and environment, or energy and water, you will have even people working in biomedicine. They will find a way to say this is going to be for biofuel, and you will have applications in that area. And if you have multi-PIs with only the requirement that you need one young faculty member, there will be a lot of, and we really want to discourage this. There will be a lot of people riding coattails.
But that would not be. I don't. Yeah. Okay. If you get a lot of proposals, let's say you get still a lot of proposal, you still have an easier time to review it because you have a larger outcome, more prestigious, as you called it. There will be bigger interest to review that kind of initiative. And you need relatively fewer people because it's more targeted to review it. If you want to review all of molecular biology, it's very hard to get the spectrum of reviewers together to do that. And if you have the success rate of 4.3% from the pre-proposals granted, it's a great amount of frustration that people have to go from that, with that broad field, to that few awards, 6 awards basically, in each field. And so that I think would not be, even if you have 150 proposals and for the other scenarios, or 200, I don't know. I mean, that could be. But I think interdisciplinary or multi-PI from previous ARP ATP cycles, we always had fewer awards like that. It takes people who, who can work together, which is much harder than if you just put out a pre-proposal on your own, which basically everybody has already written.
If we're really trying to help junior faculty, it's really much more important for them to be writing proposals more on their own than as perhaps riding the coattails of people who are more senior. And so if we really want to have an impact on their careers, it's really important that they can show that they're the ones who've received these awards.
Well, anyway, an alternative that would be going along a similar track would be if you want to, if you want to have a reasonable possibility of doing the reviewing, you might. There's a fairly high pressure for. Pretty tough. If you said biological, instead of saying biological science, all other, if you said biological sciences, ecology, and population genetics, there wouldn't be that much pressure.
Yeah, they're fine.
But I'm curious about how we had so much pressure in biological sciences, all other. What were they? What were those proposals about?
I don't remember the names of them. Maybe we can get a list from.
I just can't. I mean, I suspect that.
Stacy, can we get a list of the titles so that we can just scan over what the titles were for the last go round of the biological sciences, just to get an idea of the spectrum.
Yeah, the last go around was supposedly. Essentially molecular biology, right?
Yes.
Well, I was wondering about.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was wondering about the biological sciences, all other. There seems to be a fair proposal pressure there, and I'm wondering who are these people?
So you want to know?
2009, the 2009 competition, for example.
The list of awardees?
No, the titles, so that we can see what the topics were, in that area. That's what Bob is asking.
Okay.
How many proposals were in materials, and then how many were in the other area?
Well, and specifically in biological sciences, all other. It's hard for. I have a feeling that they must have been medical. That would be my guess, because you wouldn't have that kind of.
We can pull the award list from
2009 award list for biological sciences, all other. There were 17 funded.
Are you trying to do it on the screen? Maybe while Dale is trying that, our lunch boxes are there. We can hand you the lunch.
Well, this is an almost impossible problem. I appreciate the effort that you made to come up with an alternative of something that would be practically feasible. I mean, that's the issue, is that you don't want the cost of running the program to consume a substantial fraction of the money given to the program.
Right, and to make it meaningful with very little funds, which we can't change that equation.
The fact that it doesn't have overhead does make it better than you might think. But,
The idea is that you keep talking and debating this. If we don't break for lunch.
Let me ask you something that perhaps language to sort of narrow the scope. If we say, let's say we do pick energy and environment or energy and water, how do we restrict it to the fundamentals of it rather than the applied side of it or the technology side of it.
I mean, aside from putting the word basic science or fundamental science in there, unless we narrow the topic, and I hate to narrow the topic because then you may start precluding, various areas of engineering or chemistry or physics or whatever. So, I mean, I like the broader scope, but other than saying fundamental research or basic science, I'm not sure how the best way to do that. I do wonder, though. I know a couple of you had indicated that, no, it's not a good idea to restrict what universities set forth, but, I mean, some burden should be on the universities to try to put their best foot forward in terms of proposals, and if they don't, then that's the way it is. I mean, because, I mean, the numbers of proposals are absolutely phenomenal, and it is a lot of burden for the state to have to go through so many. So, I just wonder if putting some of the burden on the universities, and I can't say that my university always makes the best choices. I'm sure all of us can say that, but, it might actually train some of our universities to be a little bit more selective in terms of actually putting the right proposals forward. And maybe they can do their own external searches of external reviews of which proposals might be best for the program.
You bring up a interesting point, because I think we could determine how that would be done at the university. We could say this has to be done by a faculty level committee and take it out of the hands of just administrators.
And not by whoever's in the office.
That's correct.
Yes.
And
yes.
So I think we could restrict that, could we not, Reinhold? In the wording of the document.
Right. I assume you can do that. I don't know how you would have oversight over that process. We did it 1 year where when the funding was down to, I think, $4 million, or I forget, but we had more areas open still, and it was the 1 year where we received very negative feedback in our merit review. It was unanimously not liked, the idea that institutions pre-selected. Now, granted, we did not give any mechanism how that is done. We just said, I forget X number. Was it precise even? Was precise of institution based on research dollars, how many were allowed to select?
And I remember that University of Houston had about 22 slots that they could submit to, and it was very poorly done, because not knowing what the eventual criteria for evaluation would be, they felt that they were not that the institutions were not empowered to make sort of really educated understanding of which proposals to move forward.
But I think universities have to do that all the time. If they, if it's an NSF solicited, only one proposal goes out, or NIH or whatever, and so basically all you've got are the program, the program guidelines, and you don't know what directions the reviewers are going to go. And so I think universities are used to doing this. Mm-hmm. They may not do it well, but perhaps if we do provide a little bit of guidelines, like Betty Sue had suggested, that might be useful.
And there are other funding agencies that do that. Pew Scholars, for example, are pre-selected, number of candidates, or a candidate.
The faculty choosing candidates could solve the problem fairly equitably, or reducing the number of proposals. It doesn't, however, tie to the problem of having a widely diverse group of reviewers. There, you really need to restrict to the discipline a lot more. I mean, when we look at these biological other, it's mostly a few ecology type grants funded, with the rest primarily being a range of medical research, with several of them actually appearing to me to be fairly molecular. The guy that was looking for the antibody technologies, for example. Sorry, I'm muttering. Anyway, so if we solve the area problem, we may automatically solve the number proposal problem to some extent, and if it doesn't appear that that would be the case, we could have the institutions doing some filtering of the pre-proposals. So perhaps we should discuss the area issue more. It's a difficult one. When you talk about energy, let's talk a minute about these. But you can tell in biomedicine pretty much what kind of proposals you're going to get. So let's talk for a minute about energy and environment, or let's talk about those separately because they're not necessarily tied together. Take energy. Maybe you could tell me, Angela, a little bit about the area of your research. Are you work in energy, or?
I do some work in energy, yes. So, I mean, we do everything from actually developing methodologies. My area is computational, so we do everything from developing methodologies to better describe some transition metal species, and some of the methodologies are not very good in terms of looking at singlet triplet gaps, as well as looking at describing the thermochemical properties of transition metal species very well. We do some work in catalysis in areas like that. So those are just a couple of examples. I mean, the spread is so much bigger than that. There's a lot of fundamental work to be done in terms of solar cells, just understanding things like metal organic frameworks and other areas such as those.
If you take solar cells, you have everybody working on solar cells has one specific goal: getting the conversion efficiency up and making it cheap. There are two goals: make it cheap, get the conversion efficiency up. And there are fundamental issues with respect to that, but it's the goal is not curiosity, right? It's not. I really would like to know, about how I can couple the triiodide oxidation reaction to some semiconductor system. It's really, I would like to make a solar cell that's highly efficient. So I have a hard time, thinking of this as basic research. Even though it could be very interesting. Now, applied doesn't mean uninteresting. Applied research can be extremely interesting, but it's not necessarily basic. Anyway, that's a problem that I have with these things, and I don't know. I don't object to basic research. I mean, I don't object to applied research. I just think that if we choose topics like biomedicine and energy in the environment, we're going to exclude a lot of basic research in favor of applied research. So.
Bob, I certainly hear what you're saying, and I think what we've seen in our national trends is, and it's in our biomedical research, it's called translational. It's a word that most of us basic scientists really hate to hear because it's not defined. I mean, what does it mean? How does it happen? And it's been a goal. Then it becomes a goal that you're not trying to find out what the mechanism is, as your research is doing, and I hope my research is doing. But it becomes, okay, how can I do this or that, cure this or fix that, or make energy cheaper, or whatever our goal is. And I think we've gotten away from that in our philosophy of research. I think you've hit a very important problem. So while I'm looking at this chart, I see, a lot of application pressure in the biological sciences in both categories. Doesn't matter which one it is and how you define them. And I think we still have to consider that we might lose an audience, maybe just once, maybe forever, I don't know. But these other areas, almost all of the other areas do, in my view, in my limited view, constitute basic science. Physics and astronomy, mathematics, chemistry, computer science. And there's something called computational biology, which you know very well, which is a huge, huge problem because of all the data that's being generated in biomedicine, and we don't know what to do with it. And we need the brains, the people who are mathematically oriented to do that. Well, that's basic stuff. We really need those people to help us to discern what the data means and how it fits into these gigantic pathways, complex, metabolic, proteomics, metabolomics, and so on. So what I guess I'm getting to is, let's talk about these basic categories for a minute and just see what we could do about promoting it. Let's take that as our goal, to promote basic science, and then look at these categories and see how we might design a program. And by so doing, we might, in fact, because there are fewer applications here. I mean, in each case, the biological sciences is twice as many as any single category, the biological sciences other. So that would, in effect, cut a number of applications, just offhand. Is that a valuable approach?
Of course, I'm happy with that notion. However, you are going to have a bit of a nightmare with the panels.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Essentially, say you had a panel for all of the physical sciences. People would be talking past each other. This is, it's impossible for a mathematician to understand without a lot of work. Organic chemistry, it's certainly impossible for an organic chemist with a tremendous amount of work to understand a pure mathematician. So,
or a mathematician understand a mathematician.
Well, they all claim to. They all claim to. So one way around this, of course, would be to have a number of small panels. You could have a certain allocation for chemistry, a certain allocation for physics, a certain allocation for mathematics. There's not a tremendous amount of proposal pressure there compared to the biological science.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Is it conceivable that we move to a mail-in type of review in this case, where?
Well, they're already doing.
No, in that you could almost say, you identify an expert, say, in magnetism, and have that person look at, say, 2 proposals. And those are only 2 magnetism proposals that have come through, or, say, 3 astrophysics proposals. And do it entirely by mail-in.
But somehow, if you select a priori that you have one award in that area, you could do that. I mean, that's a very small, but somehow you have to pit the awards against each other. And so typically that's what the panel meeting was for, that the experts, there's at most one expert in each area on a panel. And if there's a good proposal in that area, that expert would champion that proposal naturally, because that's the expertise. And the challenge would be to explain the pros and cons to the panel members and convince them that it is indeed good. So there's a benefit in a way to pit the proposals against other expertises or niche areas.
Well, I'm a great fan of face-to-face and that sort of compromise of the face-to-face, and I think you all do a good job of getting the panel electronically.
Yes, and even there's a benefit to real face-to-face, but that's has been passed. With large panels, it's very difficult to do it electronically in a way, because.
Are you doing this video? Is it video conferencing? You're doing Skype or telephone strictly?
Oh, when we do the panel meeting, it's we have a in-house created tool which is web-based, which is but you need user login, so it's secure, and it displays the proposals, and it lets you rank the proposals and put in ranking parameters in it, and also has links to the proposals so they can be pulled up instantly. And it can be run in a fashion that everybody sees the same page, or an individual reviewer can go off and does his or her own thing and go back to the panel view, as we call it. So everybody is looking at the same thing, and then they talk over the phone.
It's not that you don't see the face of the other person.
Right. It's the same procedure we actually use when they're sitting in the same room. It's not different. The only difference is that you don't get the facial expression, the body language, and you don't get the talk at lunchtime, So.
Well, it might be possible to do this in the following sense. Each reviewer would be asked to, in reading a proposal and thinking about it, to think about, the originality, the probabilities of getting useful information out of this, the possible future impact on the field if the proposed work is successful, and give this proposal a rank, you rank, you probably will only have 2 or 3 proposals to look at most. If you say you're going to have chemistry, there might be 3 organic chemistry proposals. There might be more, who knows? But it certainly can rank the proposals that they reviewed. And then it just comes down to what we want from the reviewers is a ranked list of the proposals with ordered priority, and comments and suggestions about the levels of funding that were both asked for and what the reviewers think would be more desirable, knowing our financial constraints. Anyway, you have this meeting, and then people are going to argue with each other about how to do this ranking. And I don't know whether the person who talks the loudest or most persuasively or what will get their people at the top, but at least you would get a result. I think you would eventually get a result. And if you're comparing apples to oranges, that's probably about the best results you can hope for. I mean, all of these are, in this, if you look at this list of funded proposals, you have people doing straight medical work compared to people studying fire ant systems. So they somehow, or that panel somehow or another, made that comparison. So in principle, we ask them to do this all the time, as a matter of fact. Compare the incomparable. And
a lot more proposals in each category. Right? And that's fundamentally where they could go up to 20 proposals and fund 20 proposals. Agreeing on 1 to 20 is a lot easier than saying 1.
Right, and if it is hyper selective, if the success rate gets too low, it becomes unfair to not only to the proposer but to the reviewers as well. If you get a pre-proposal with 1-page text and now we have graphics and some biographical information and some references, if you have a very small number of pre-proposals, you're allowed to select out of, say, 30 or 35. The reviewer can make a good decision which ones are the 4 best. If you go to 10, then they can say, okay, 10 are at the top. But which ones of the 10 are the 3 or 4 best, it becomes arbitrary because they're all good.
yeah,
And so that's the complaint we get then if we have to be too highly selective.
But I have to submit that this is exactly what's happening at the national level. There is really no way to discriminate among the grants that are going through the National Institutes of Health right now. I don't care what the review, the review process has changed. The way they do it has changed, but that didn't help. Didn't help at all. You're splitting hairs. And there's a lot of good research is going unfunded. So I think this is a universal problem is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not sure we're going to solve that, but if we could come to a conclusion about how we would handle this limited amount of money that seems equitable.
I served on the admissions committee for Rice for a while. And after I'd served on it, I'm really slow in the uptake. After I'd served on it for a couple of years, I realized that the decisions that we were pondering over and thinking about there was not enough information to make any distinctions. We could have just said, well, here's a band of people. Let's choose at random people in this area. And of course, everybody would say, who was involved in that would say, well, that was totally unfair. But that's the truth. You can usually tell somebody that's at the top of a field, even if you're not in that field very often. But you can't compare somebody at the top of this field with somebody at the top of that field with any hope of being confident about it. But I mean, I think that we're trying to be as fair as possible, and life is basically unfair, so.
Well, I think if we consider doing what we're talking about here in these various very basic areas, we have to have at least an award for each of the areas. At least one award.
Yeah.
So, that defines how many awards we give, at least from my viewpoint, right?
Also defines how many areas we have, because
Well, the first thing you got to do is decide, is it going to be a broader net or topics? If you're going to have 4 or 5 topics, and that defines the number and the number of prizes. But if it's broader areas or broader nets you want to cast, then it may be more awards to each broad area. Then you have to narrow that down. But I think fundamentally you got to decide that first. Second's how big an award's going to be. I believe a little bigger award would be better than an $80,000 award. I never really thought that was the way to go anyway. I think we should have probably maybe fewer awards that slightly bigger, maybe 2x bigger or something that makes them a little more worthwhile. And potentially maybe easier to review even down the road when you have fewer. But I think we need to step back and say, let's first decide, are we going to go a broader net or a more focused?
Well, can I make a suggestion? Let me just throw something on the table so we can sort of get off square one. If we say there are about 8 categories here that we would like to consider, it may be less than that, but let's say 8. And we say that the average award would be $120,000, which is 50% more than the previous one. I think twice as much is too much. I agree with Bob on that point. 120 is attractive, and for a young person, and as you point out, Bob, it's without any added F&As, no indirect cost.
180.
Yeah, exactly. So I think from that standpoint, it would be attractive. So that would be my proposal, and you all can shoot it down.
Can I ask a question? How many institutions do we get proposals from? Say pre-proposals. How many institutions we get pre-proposals from?
We can look that up, what we had last time with a scenario. I'll try to put it up on the screen. Oh, Dale, can you go and the award list from the last competition is up, and the first page, I think, gives you the number of institutions.
I was asking how many institutions we get pre-proposals from.
Right. That's on that list, which is coming up.
So, Reinhold, is the 70% rule still applicable? 70%?
Yes.
Okay. So.
So here we have pre-proposals submitted by institution, and there were 43 institutions for 280.
Okay, so suppose we decided on 4 areas and said that each institution through a faculty committee would decide who would go forward, and they could have put one person forward in each area. That would be about 180 proposals.
Not all institutions will participate in all of the programs. They couldn't. Like, for instance, the UT MD Anderson couldn't do it in all 4, for instance.
Right, so it'd probably be less than 150 pre-proposals. And so you'd have 4 areas, and our intent would be, well, that's to say we want to make 2 awards in each area. Then that would get us 8 award totals, and that would hit your 120,000 level.
Right. That's what I was.
But I think that's intrinsically unfair to have just one from each institution, just because some of the bigger institutions, like the UTs and A&M, is just not fair to them. They have, some of their departments have more faculty than entire universities. So I don't think that's an equitable way to distribute that. But then again, the pre-proposal issue becomes much more significant for Reinhold to work with. So.
The year we let institutions pre-select, we didn't have pre-proposals. We went straight to full proposals.
We don't want that many full proposals, as I recall. You have you're aiming for 20 proposals here, 160 or so proposals, 150 or so proposals would be a lot.
This was the year we didn't have pre-proposals, right? 2011 was when we didn't have pre-proposals, was right? Or?
So these are pre-proposal numbers here, right, Dale? These are
Pre-proposals.
It was last
time. Okay.
So, for example, UT Austin probably had 100 or something like that.
32 pre-proposals. This was the restricted group that we looked at last time, years 2 through 5.
So this is 2011?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Right. So this was a restricted area. Yeah, that was just two areas. Actually, I was thinking that we might let institutions select people, but still require pre-proposals. That has a tendency to give people who made the selections instant feedback on what people think about their selections. So you could do this. This could work. You could let the institutions select 2 people. That's in each of 4 areas, and have them submit pre-proposals as well. You could do this with faculty, not having administrations, but having faculty make the selection. And then if you go through a pre-proposal process, it wouldn't be that hard. You'd have to have at least 2 reviewers in each of 4 areas. So that's probably would do more than that. I think you could do that. I'm not sure that it the basic problem is I'm not sure that would make anybody happy. Certainly the notion of making these 4 areas in the areas where there's less proposal pressure seems a bit, bad. But on the other hand, let's see. If you take,
Why couldn't you, some kind of weighting factor, faculty, staff, research, so forth, by institution on the pre-proposals?
yeah,
But you want to limit to a certain degree, but you want the big schools like UT and so forth that are going to have, so you have a weighting factor that says some schools may only get 1 proposal, and then have the schools put in that's their limit. That's how many proposals they can put in, and that at least fixes the pre-proposal size where you want it. And that's about probably as fair as we can get in terms of ratio to faculty. Just use a weighting factor on each one. I think we did that one year, back years ago. But just go ahead and set that, and then we'll at least set the limit on the number of pre-proposals, so we sort of know where our reviewers would have to be focused and so.
Yeah, I think the weighting factor almost has to go in there. But, I'm amazed at how many institutions, and this may limit the number that do this. If the onus is put on them, we may have a significant drop off of institutions that do apply, especially knowing the odds.
We don't have any problem with fewer pre-proposals.
No, I mean that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Give 8.
Right. Exactly. It'll only be the ones that feel like they can compete.
But actually, if we look at the list up there, most schools only have 1, 2, just a handful of pre-proposals. It's the big schools that, So in some ways, I'm worried that if we put a number, if we say 8 or 4, or how many ever some of these small schools are going to think that's their license to include even more.
No. They would only get 1 probably in a weighting factor.
I don't think we're solving the problem by doing this, and I think we're probably making it more difficult, because we're going to have more areas, more distinction of the areas. I think if we go to 4 topics and we do this, I think we're going to make the problem more complex, not simpler for the review process at least.
The year we did it for the purpose of eliminating the pre-proposal round, and it was extremely unpopular. I mean, if you look at all the merit reviews going back, they typically are very good reviews. The one year everybody came down, and it was proposers, OSP, reviewers, everybody did not like the idea of having I don't know if you change something with selection process internally. It's just, I don't know if you can mandate it or suggest it or whatever with faculty review, if that works. You can that way it's a way to reduce the proposals. But if you still go to pre-proposals, then I don't know if the effect is that great.
Well, what I was trying to come up with was a scheme where there wouldn't be one particular discipline that was permanently excluded from the competition because we couldn't handle the mechanics of it.
Well, we can't fund we already know have known for several years we can't fund NHERP as we used to with all the research area, which was a broad spectrum across all science fields. So we restricted it in the last years to broad fields. you just can't take $1 million and spread it across everything. It's impossible.
Well, I understand that, but
So
you know,
the question is, do you let everybody take a shot at it with some mechanism for broad spectrum, or if you restrict it to begin with to some purpose?
I agree that you know, it's impossible for us to open up to all of these fields. We'd spend all of the money on reviewing proposals and nobody would get any money to actually do the work. But on the other hand, I was just coming up with, there is, for example, we could sort of walk through some of this. We don't have to allocate the money equally between two fields. We could allocate money. Say we went with biological sciences, all other. We could allocate a larger amount of money for that and a smaller amount of money for some particular smaller field, so that they feel like they could. Okay, someday it may not come up in my lifetime, but someday somebody from my institution will have a shot in my field. I don't really know whether that's, it's very hard to make this all work.
Can I suggest something? Can we, I think we need to perhaps narrow the discussion to either we pick a topic like energy and environment or biomedicine, or we can pick, say, organic chemistry or astrophysics, and have limited competitions. This time around, it's in that area. Next time around, if you still are at $1 million, we do other set of areas, and then take the age restriction out. That way, you are. Or the criterion that this 2 to 5 year restriction out, and say anybody who has been in the state of Texas for less than, say, 15 years has the option to look at, if you're an organic chemist or an astrophysicist or a computer scientist, those are the topics this time around. Next time around, we'll have a different set of topics, but make it a competition that looks at excellence. And therefore, it reduces the burden on the review process. I think we're trying to, we have too many constraints on the problem and can't come up with adequate solutions.
If you do that, of course, the 2 to 5 year, and I think this might be what you're getting at, the 2 to 5 year restriction becomes very bad, because somebody who was eligible the first time won't be eligible the next time because they've already surpassed that 5 year limit. Unfortunately, this is a biennial legislature we deal with.
And one thing we can do is, if we decide that this is the process we want to do for $1 million every time, then keep this in place, even if at some later time the legislative work comes along and says we're going to fund this at a higher level.
Well, if you look at the proposal of pressure and the people who have not really gotten their share, it's been biological sciences, engineering, all other, and the physical sciences have gotten a little bit more than what their fair share would be in the past. So if we were to go with biological sciences, all other, which will lead to a certain amount of apple and oranges comparisons, and engineering, all other, that would be 2 fields. Let's see what the proposal pressure. is like 500, well, that, of course, by putting the point in career limitation, the number will be lower considerably. What did we do? Let me look at your previous sheet. In the 2011 composition, do you remember how many pre-proposals there were in each of the two areas? In the 2011 competition?
Yeah, we can look that up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I keep hitting the microphone.
So biology had 169 pre-proposals, material science 109. And the pre-proposal review evened that out because that's why we do pre-proposal review to 57 versus 48. And then 6 were funded in each.
So actually, the pressure in biological sciences, all other, is even higher than the pressure in molecular, biochemistry, microbiology, and biogenetics. In 2009, engineering, all other, was the next highest in terms of proposal pressure. So this engineering, all other, will be all over the map. So you'll have to have. It'll be, well, 3 or 4 different engineering areas. So you'll have the problem of diversity of proposals. But you have that in biological sciences, all other, as well. Not quite as severe.
So can you not define those? I mean, you all were throwing out names of engineering sub areas. You can say this area, and this area in each one if you want.
Well, I don't think, you don't have it. I would be surprised if you had it sorted out what the pre-proposals were in engineering, all area, by what departments they came out of.
No, we don't have that. The problem is that if you go by field, I think there's a distinction by field and by the word is not right, application area or topic, and that's, of course, you say it's then not basic anymore. But if you go by field, if you will always have a broad net approach. You go by what you call broad net approach. If you go by biology or engineering or electrical engineering by itself is a broad net approach. If however you say you have a certain topic, what the state needs, be it energy, water, environment, I don't know what could be possible, then you have a chance of limiting it. I have a feeling, I don't know, that's what you know better than I do. The question is how to get from a broad net approach to a more focused approach. What is that mechanism? I guess I'm trying to throw open here.
So you'd have, if you went with these two fields, I'm just trying to see if we can make numbers work. If you went with biological sciences, all other, and engineering, all other, you'd probably have about 300 pre-proposals.
The other What is the other category? I can't read it. It's
Nanoscience, material science.
nano. Oh.
Material science and nanoscience. So you probably have about the same, or the order of 300 proposals, maybe, yeah. And so we're going to get down to small grants again.
Oh, but you'll. With these two areas, if you go back to the university thing and use a weighting factor, you're going to reduce that probably by, you can reduce that by a third depending on the weighting factors that you use. So you have a couple approaches here to limit the number of pre-proposals.
What Reinhold has been telling us is that if we let the universities put forward candidates, their people are going to complain.
No,
regardless of how we do it.
You just limit the number of proposals that can come in. Yes, you'd use some pre-screening factor in the university, but as Betty Sue said a while ago, you could use a faculty review to do that, something of that nature. You could put that in. I don't see a problem with that.
Or the pre-proposal screening can be done at those institutions. Have a pre-proposal, but have them do the screening, and it's got to be done by a pre-proposal method. Maybe not, it won't be using the same reviewers as you do, but they can have their own selected reviewers and do a pre-proposal, have it reviewed internally, and then have a limited pool coming forward.
But I think at our level, we still need a pre-proposal review because that's where we got all the flack before. I don't think it's a problem using some level of pre-screening at the universities by some weighting factor. To get a fixed number of pre-proposals that we're going to receive. Then you can plan on that. And then go to the proposal, full proposal from that.
And I know we've been talking about very specific area, biological science, material science, chemistry, physics, but, I'm still afraid that we're going to disenfranchise some of the folks because if we do an area, and I don't care if it's energy, environment, I don't care whatever area, if we can choose a topical area. If you look at something like energy, environmental science, you're going to get people in biology, you're going to get people in chemistry, physics, materials science, various areas of engineering. You cast a broader net. And so then you're not just accused of saying, okay, it's biological sciences again, or material science again, or physics again, or whatever area. And so I just, that's why I'm hoping that we can focus on some sort of topical area. I don't care if it's energy and environment, but, some sort of topical areas. I really think we're going to cast a broader net, by doing that. So.
Well, perhaps the thing to define that would be you specify, you tell people that what you have in mind is exactly what you just said, the physics, the chemistry, the whatever. And then that gets at Bob Curl's concern about the basic science. So if we put it that way and we say that's what we're looking for, then that's what we should get. And if we don't get it, then it's easy to lop it out, right?
I'm curious about why you lump together energy and environmental.
Because it was on a state list. So energy is fine, environmental science, fine. I was just trying to cast a broader net. One or the other is fine. They're both huge areas, so.
So I don't have any objection really to doing this. I mean, it's one of those things we could try this and see how it works out. Okay, see what happens. So Reinhold has warned us several times, and I hear you very clearly, that if you have the institutions doing pre-screening, people are not going to be happy. We probably, when they did the pre-screening before, it was probably done by administration, wasn't it? The deans or something like that.
We really don't know.
We don't know. It just came out as a.
So can I, Reinhold, was the criticism mainly at the fact that that they were restricted numbers or the fact that there was no pre-proposal stage at the state level? Where was the criticism? Because there are two variables there. One was that it was pre-selected, and the second was that there was no pre-proposal. Because the effort, and I'll speak as a PI, the effort of writing a full-scale proposal after being pre-selected at my university level and then getting reviews that say, this is complete nonsense from the reviewers, is very disheartening, right? And so I'm trying to separate out those two issues, and if you have any information along those, that would be very useful.
The only thing I can say right now is that I don't remember people talking about the fact that that they wrote a full proposal in vain, or it was more so that they felt like the selection process was shortcut. Dale, you were there, maybe you remember something about it.
I remember we had a review on it after
The merit review. Yes.
And the problem is that a lot of the people that turned in did full proposals and wasted a lot of their time. And because if a pre-proposal, if it was done with a one-page thing like we typically do, that would have saved them a lot of time. They wouldn't have wasted all their time doing a full proposal because there were so many full proposals and so few awards even at that time.
Well, I don't understand that because we always have that. I mean, we would have calculated the number of full proposals that are allowed to a certain success ratio.
No, I think when they did the pre-screening at the university, they came in as a full proposal.
Right, but
and that's cut short.
But if you have pre-proposals, as you see there, the number of full proposals, the pre-proposal is. The purpose is to set the number of full proposals, and that would have been the same number whether we would allow us to be restrictive or the institution were restrictive by number of. All that would have changed is the proportion between institution based on their research dollars and not based on the proportion being based on the pre-proposal review. The numbers would be the same.
Numbers, but I seem to remember there were more full proposals when we did that than there were typically.
There is another issue there, and that is, if the judgment from the institution is poor, then you have a person who's written the full proposal.
Yeah, that's the point.
That had no chance,
Yeah,
That's
the point.
that gets really kind of irritating.
What we're recommending here is that pre-proposals are done at the university, one-pagers or whatever. They screen those, and then those one pages are again sent here, and that's done before a full proposal is done from that. So there's not a lot of wasted time. I mean, obviously, if you don't win a full proposal, it's wasted in a way. But
Well, as you can tell, none of us trust our administration. So that's also an element about they're letting the administration choose who goes through.
Well, they're not set up to doing this,
No, we do it all the time. We do it all the time. Just right now, I'm doing something for the major research instrumentation proposals that NSF puts out. You're allowed to submit at most 2 from every institution, and we get at least 25.
Okay.
And so it's an enormous amount of time. People put together one-page abstract. They give you a lot of information about it, and then you do a serious evaluation. So perhaps in the 6-7 years that have interceded, this has become much more routine at the institutional level, where even going for educational grants like research experience for undergraduates, RET grants, all of them are limited submissions. Similarly at the NIH stage, and the only one that hasn't done this is the Department of Energy's Early Career Award, and there they do an initial screen, but it is one of the most talked about programs amongst the young faculty because the success rates are less than 5%. And people just have no interest in submitting to that.
So I would suggest that if we go this route, that we tell them they have to use the format of the pre-proposal that we require. Mm-hmm. And that in the institution. They have to do that. That way, everything's uniform.
In fact, it's carried from there directly in, not any changes.
Yes.
So we have to think about how many final grants we're aiming for. Reynolds' proposal was for, I have it here somewhere, for 8.
Oh, no.
No. It was for 5.
That's at 198,000, but if you do 120, it's 8.
Yeah.
8.
I suggest we go with 10 at 100,000 each. There's many programs that are 100,000, so.
So
I second that.
what, it would be irresponsible not to think about how many proposals, pre-proposals from each institution would be accepted. And the idea of doing it on the basis of the total research funding for the institution makes sense. I think that that's a reasonable thing, but let's see. Kind of, it seems like some of the institutions in Texas get about $1 billion a year in research funding. I think the Baylor College of Medicine used to, maybe mostly translational research.
Maybe, but total NIH funding in the state is $1.1 billion.
Okay, 1.1.
Well, if you want to give 10 awards at 100,000, you can, and you want to limit the number of input on the other end, you can just say what success rate you want to have at the both stages, and then the number falls out, how many pre-proposals we can allow, and then we just proportion that by some measure. So if you say 10 awards, how many full proposals would you like to see? 100 or 150, and then from that it falls out how many pre-proposals you would like. If you have 100 full proposals, maybe you want to see 300 or 400 pre-proposals, and then.
Well, I think it's based on what success rate you want.
Right, that's the success rate.
Oh, if I want 20, all proposals coming in and the full proposals that get awarded, and I want a 10% success rate to encourage them to put a proposal in, or it may need to be higher than that to encourage it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Then
Decide on a number.
Well, one of the issues is that probably every eligible institution ought to get at least one, be allowed to submit at least one pre-proposal. Yeah. Yeah.
Minimum is 1, but it goes up,
It goes up from there.
weighted on whatever faculty size or whatever.
And so if you make a minimum, I mean, some of the institutions that are eligible have essentially zero research.
We always
funds.
put it at 1, at least.
Put it at 1.
you may get 0, but
Well,
everybody gets
what
one.
is I'm thinking about the algorithm for raising it as you go up in the amount of research funding.
I think there's one thing we need to look at here is, we're a state that we are trying to bring some other institutions up to Tier 1 status. We've got basically 3 institutions at Tier 1 status, and we're trying to get some up. California's got quite a few, and so if we just do this on dollars, when some of these institutions, like my own, are trying to bring in a lot of new young faculty, we don't have the dollars up like some of the other institutions, but we're trying to bring in a lot of new faculty that are absolutely dynamic faculty, and I think that some of these young folks should be given a little bit more of a chance, and perhaps give these emerging research institutions some opportunities to have a few additional slots, not just based upon the formula.
The other thing that I would add to this discussion would be that we could make it look a little bit better by presetting the success rate than what the current success rates are at the national funding level. Just even if it's just a little bit higher, it looks better, and maybe it would encourage people to apply. So I don't know that we need to encourage them, but we might. Under these circumstances, people may say, "Well, just blow it off and say that I don't have a chance." So yeah, it's a psychological thing.
You can do these things by saying in the algorithm for how you are going to change the allocations. For example, it doesn't have to be linear in the research dollars. It could be logarithmic in research dollars if you really want to bias it towards the smaller places, or it could be go as the square root of the number of research dollars.
So the other thing is that there is the eventual criterion that 70% of the money can at most go to the UTs and A&Ms, and 30% has to go to other institutions. So there is some rebalancing that occurs there. Again, I think having some simple way, and I sort of suggest this more for transparency with the faculty and sort of people who are going to be applying. Simple ways of sort of scaling this would be the best. If we identify, say, the 7 institutions that are trying to become Tier 1, the 4 institutions that are already Tier 1, and the medical schools that are separate, and identify for them each certain numbers of slots, that might be an easier way rather than even scaling it with federal research dollars.
But so the plan is to limit the number of pre-proposals to a certain level, and to aim for a certain number of proposals and a certain success rate.
So what would be a good success rate for the full proposal round?
20%.
20%, and we have 10 awards, which makes it 50 full proposals. And what would be a good success rate for the pre-proposal round?
I'd say 12%, between 10 and 12, because of what's going on nationally.
1 in 8, I think is good. But that makes your review process 900 reviews.
Let's see, if you had
400.
400 pre-proposals, each of them getting 2 reviews.
Right.
So you need 900 total reviews.
Right.
It was 774 last
800,
time.
yes.
Yeah. No, 800 for the first round plus 50 times 2.
Yes.
So you had 774 the last time.
Yes, so it's similar. 400. It's more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because this was only 300
774 that you had last time.
Right.
You can drop it down to 10%.
Yeah.
you can make pre-proposal success rates pretty. You could
Make it 1 in 5 again there too. So make it 20% there too. So then you have only 250 total pre-proposals.
One in 5 is. We typically have a reviewer look at. Okay, that gets complicated. Yeah, because of the double yeses. Okay. We typically give a reviewer about 30 to 40 pre-proposals and allow them to select 3 or 4, and that is too few. But there's overlap and not overlap between the yeses. We allow 1 yes to be invited. So it's that math can be worked out.
Like in one case last time, it was about the for the biological sciences. It was about 1 1 and 3, wasn't it? And for the it was about 1 and 2 for the material sciences, nanosciences. So, well, yeah, I'm not sure.
Because that in itself is not really fair, is it? To have.
But so basically, at this point, we have the same competition as last time. We have, I mean, there is not significant difference. We had 12 proposals funded, now we have 10 proposals funded, and in terms of success rate, we go between 250 and 300 pre-proposals, and we had 275 pre-proposals. So what we worked out so far is the same as last time.
Well, the number of full proposals last time was 105. We're aiming for 50 now.
Right, so there's
more
a...
than 50, that's a factor of 2 reduction in
But
proposals.
also, if you go to at most 250 pre-proposals, 50 proposals, and that means we need to figure out all the criteria. And I suspect you can't do 10 because you do have overhead costs on the $1 million, right? And
right.
Effectively, you have between 25 and 40K.
960, what is it? 960,000, right, is roughly what we have. 950,000 is what we have for funding proposals or so. So it would be, in terms of review of full proposals, it would be a substantial cutting on the full proposals. What we're doing, what we're proposing, we're suggesting is that maybe the number of pre-proposals would be cut back. The number of pre-proposals that went to proposals would be cut back.
It says the overall cost for engaging reviewers was $25,000, but are there other expenses?
There's the merit review panel. There's a merit panel.
Does that happen again in this next biennium?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So the
I think we're back to 8 proposals at 120K. That slices up 960 effectively, rather than 12 at 80K. So.
Or do 10 at 95. I don't know.
Yeah, 10 at 95.
I like 10.
Yeah, or 96. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a small tax on it to get to 10.
so what?
But so 10 at about 100,000. 50 full proposals. And how many pre-proposals?
250 at most.
250 pre-proposals.
Trouble is, if you have 250 pre-proposals and 1 yes out of 2 gets the full proposal, it's not going to be limited to 50. That's what I mean. How do we? We have to tell them.
Maybe we need to target 20. We have to look at it as being a 1/3 cutoff, and so that means 150 pre-proposals total.
Well, you can still end up ranking them and putting a cut line.
Well,
And
I
then
mean,
you have to-
you can. Well,
Ranking 125 is a little bit more difficult. So.
A little more.
When you have 2 reviewers of a pre-proposal disagree, they really ought to talk to each other and try to work out why.
Well, the issue there is that, we had that scenario last time. Luckily, we didn't need it. I think if once you start talking about pre-proposals between reviewers who don't agree on one or another, it becomes very, without a full panel review, it becomes intransparent, or whatever the word is, not transparent. We had the provision actually in the RFA last time that there was a rebuttal phase. We didn't get enough pre-proposals that we had to go to the rebuttal phase. We felt, and I still don't know how that, how the purpose, how that makes sense.
Well, some of these things can be negotiated. That is, if you tell the reviewers that you're aiming for 50 full proposals, and because they disagree with each other, you get more than 50 pre-proposals. People that are disagreeing with each other can negotiate to some extent. You know, I try to, where they're in disagreement, we can, I hate to use the term, they can horse trade a little bit to resolve their disagreements. Well, maybe you're right on this one. I think I'm right on that one. And, you know, they're not eager to have more proposals to review.
I guess what I'm saying, I would rather have a few more full proposals to review than make the one page. And again, as you said before, you know, the strongest voice will prevail. Then it's not a clear way if a reviewer gets a certain number of votes to say yes to, and that is a deciding factor, then it's fairly clear. Somebody must have liked something in that proposal to see there's a spark in here which can be built up. And
so let me understand, right? Let's say we have 75 pre-proposals for each topic. That means each institution, on average, there are 2 per institution. Mm-hmm. And I'd say they were looking at that previous table that you had, there were probably 30 of those institutions that had one or few pre-proposals. Probably 15 institutions that had more than one. Those are going to get about three on average, and the others will get 1 each. I think that's fairly broad with what we're trying to achieve here. I think we can probably go with 75 pre-proposals, and that'll bring you to 50 proposals submitted. Total. 75 for each topic, 2 topics, there are a total of 150.
Well, let's see, if you're having 150, okay, the big guys are the main campuses, right? So you have the 2 main campuses. Then you have, what is there, 6 institutions that are vying for Tier 1?
7.
7 institutions that are vying for Tier 1. So you have about, what was the number, 40 or so?
43. Total 43, but then there are medical institutions like Baylor and UT, UT Southwestern,
Yeah,
UT.
You've got the medical institutions. Of course, if it's going to be energy in the environment, they're just going to be out in the cold, aren't they?
Never know. They might have bacterial stuff that they're doing on the environmental side.
Biomass, anything along those
Biomass,
lines?
I think there's
Yes.
I've seen some very interesting proposals at DOE from medical institutions.
Definitely.
The question is, what weighting should they get? I mean, they have huge research funding, but generally not in this area, not in the area of energy or environment. So they probably shouldn't get a whole lot of weighting. Anyway, if you take,
I thought thought it was based on total funding, not specific funding for areas. Is that not
Yeah, I
right?
agree, but on the other hand, who would, what fraction of funding from a medical institution is in this area?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's minuscule. Yeah, I'm not saying that they shouldn't submit. I'm just wondering, should they probably, some of these institutions have as much funding as Texas A&M. Well, Texas A&M's got some agricultural things that are pretty heavily funded, but these medical institutions are quite heavily funded.
Bob, my understanding is that energy and environment is one topic, and we'll probably look at biomedicine or something like that for
Well,
the
I
second
think
topic.
that I'm sort of leaning this time towards energy and environment, energy for one topic and environment for the other. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of proposal pressure from the biological side. I agree that the times are tough.
So do you want to do environmental and toxicology, or because you've got a huge constituency of medical fields in the state of Texas, and they are increasingly being less and less funded for fundamental science. All the money that's coming from NIH, all the money that's coming from any place is going towards translational research.
Yes.
And we certainly want to protect that aspect of that funding, for that aspect of fundamental work to go on in our medical institutions. And I think if not this, I don't know what other program could do it.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, the issue I have is that with the medical institutions, I'm having it's a tremendous amount of pressure, and effectively what we're saying is that every time, if assuming the program continues, every time at similar funding levels, every time either molecular biology will have half of it, or other biological things will have half of it every time. So effectively, and that's, the pressure is high, but
Fundamental science in the medical field is dying, and there is no other way to put it. And there are no other mechanisms that are there to really address this. Yes, you do have things like the Howard Hughes, but increasingly even those are going to more of the applied side. All of the Gates Foundation money, for instance, people raise those kinds of issues, but it's going towards solving immediate problems for humanity rather than fundamental science in that area. So I think we have to be really cognizant of that aspect, and it is a huge part of what Texas does well, and that is in the health business. So
perhaps what we could do, because when we talked about the energy, we talked about mentioning chemistry, physics, materials, science, many areas. Perhaps we could also do that with the environment and mention toxicology in other areas that would be relevant to make sure we do capture the biologist in that and the folks in medicine in that area.
So, okay, you make a convincing case. So if you go half to that, 5 grants in that area, then you have. Why do you put together energy and environment? In other words, I can picture energy 3 grants, environment 2, or something like that. But why? What is the connection you're trying to make? I mean, clearly they're deeply connected if the issue is climate change. But
it's also the single biggest nexus is the nexus between energy and environment. We can come up with great solutions, for energy if we didn't care about environment. We can come up with fantastic solutions for the environment if we didn't care about where the energy was going to come from. And it's that nexus, it's that tug of war between those two that has really challenged the fundamental science. And I think that's where
Clean energy, basically.
well,
Partly.
or sustainable, or you can sort of talk about it in
Exactly.
many different ways. But it's that nexus that really has challenged all of us. If we didn't care about it, I don't think we would have a problem. So.
But, so what do you, we have to be a little specific about what you're saying when you call for proposals. Do you want to make the call of some connection between energy and environment, or do you want to, you know, I notice that, I'm not going to get into that, but you see I'm trying to figure out what you say to the proposers. What are you going to say to proposers about how to fit how does their proposal fit into this category, or what categories are we doing?
Write something.
Well, we could, you know, we could, if we can't come up with a way of connecting those two, we can always make them two separate categories and have three categories rather than two. So,
Actually, Bob, I think we can connect them because there's so much in sustainable energy, clean energy, and I think that's also an area that, you know, if the legislature sees that that's an area of interest, perhaps by some miracle that might inspire them to provide us with more money in the future.
the reason I didn't complete my thought is because of this little section about coal and clean coal.
Yes.
Which is an oxymoron.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think that made us all sort of halt.
So that's why I am sort of.
Well, I think you got the legislature really thinking in the applied realm, rarely in the fundamental research realm. So, I mean, you can call it an oxymoron, whatever you want, but to them, you know, if you can clean coal up or clean the environment result up from using coal, and that's good. But there's definitely a connection between energy and the environment. I mean,
There is a connection.
energy makes the environment different, or it's a result. So there's definitely a connection. Now, whether you call it, is there fundamental basic research that connects the two, that may be a little different question. But I think you're really looking, the legislature thinks different than what this panel thinks. They think in applied terms, whether it's medicine or whatever. Can't ignore it.
Workforce development.
Right, so that's where they think the money's being spent.
Well, there is things like the effect of windmills on migratory birds.
Yeah.
Let me try some verbiage on you. So proposals focused on the fundamental science of chemistry, physics, material science, advancing an understanding of energy and environment. Does that capture everything that we're trying to do here?
Yeah, that's terrific because then it could be either one or one or both, or
Well, let me make one further thing. One of the big things in the biological arena is genes and environment. So you could actually take the environment part and have it to be the super umbrella on the biological side and the what do you think?
I think there's a huge area right now in the nuclear realm, you know, on the environment. You know. There's lots of fundamental work there on how do you get rid of the stuff or contain it.
Well, I'm trying to avoid the contortion. I can see the contortions that people in medicine would have to go through to hit that target. So I would personally think it'd be better just to have half for biomedicine or biomedicine and half for
What you probably
energy and
need
environment.
is when the proposals are reviewed and then a full proposal is reviewed, is the criteria they're reviewed to. The criteria is going to be a big part of how you look at this. Say, it could be a applied criteria, it could be a fundamental research criteria, but the criteria ought to be well explained ahead of time how they're reviewed, and then the review panels have to follow that criteria.
We need to write up how that should be done. So that's another writing task.
Well, if we need to wordsmith, I guess we could do that via email among us. If we have I think this is a great skeletal network here that we could work with if you want to do it that way. But or staff can. But I think the scientists are struggling with this, so we probably need to talk among ourselves a little bit more about this. But to answer your point about the genes environment thing, there's a whole funding mechanism in one of the NIH institutes on that subject. So, yeah, it's something we might think of in the future if we don't want to do it now.
Well, I don't think that's where the proposal pressure is.
No, yeah.
So, okay, so we're at the stage where I think we've got their topics. We have what the target for number of grants, the number of proposals, the number of pre-proposals. The two main tasks that we have in front of us are, one is to write the review criteria for the two topics in such a way that they aim more at fundamental science. And the other task is to think a little bit more deeply about allocation of, so now we have, let's see, are there currently 6 medical schools in Texas? Yeah, UT Houston, UT San Antonio, Baylor, UT Southwestern, Texas Tech. Is there another one? Does A&M have theirs going yet?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
6. Yeah. And I think UT El Paso is going to start one, but I'm not sure that they're up and going.
Who's this?
UNT Health Sciences Center as well.
Up UT El Paso's going?
University of North Texas Health Sciences
Got
Center.
a medical school now?
We've had one for a while, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
7.
7. And I think that UTMB, that's 8. So,
First one, actually.
what, and El Paso is going to, I'm not sure if they're up. El Paso would be 9, and they're talking about one for Austin.
Yeah, Round Rock
Yeah.
is one, but that's not yet.
Yeah.
So 9 medical schools. So maybe we should think about this allocation in terms of the two areas that we're talking about. I would think that the fundamental medicine we should really only expect people from the 9 medical schools to contribute to that.
Actually, would that just be from the medical schools, though? Because, I mean, there's so much biology research going on at all the, UT Austin's got a huge biology department and A&M and many of these other institutions.
All the universities have, or most universities have pretty large biological departments. And I'm sure they're suffering too. But they sort of got a chance last time to sort of the way I looked at it.
But last time there was awardees not only from major regular university campuses, but there are also awardees from the medical schools as well on the last competition in molecular biology.
I think being more inclusive is perhaps better. You will have lesser numbers of proposals coming from other institutions, but certainly having the biologists and biochemists and even some of the chemists doing medicinal chemistry, they would have significant interest in applying for this.
Actually, UT Austin has a medicinal chemistry department, as I recall. But
Yes.
we have to come up with some way to make the numbers work. So I believe we're heading for 150 pre-proposals. Of those, we probably reserve about 30 for one proposal institutions. So that gives you 120 pre-proposals to spread over these 18 institutions. So now, of course,
30 to be distributed among the.
we notice that we have left out rice.
SMU or?
SMU, actually, Rice didn't get any grants the last time. That SMU did. I think Baylor did, and Wiley College got one. So maybe we should make this 19. Count Rice and SMU as one and make it 19.
Can you go back one couple slides with all the institutions? Where the proposal pressures came from.
The agricultural research put in a lot of proposals.
That's these, basically.
Rice had 6, and I think that Southern Methodist had 3, Baylor had 3. So University of Texas, Austin had 25. Is that right? No, that one.
32.
32. University of Houston had 25.
Only applying for half.
North Texas had 12. So let's see, we're trying to get about half as many pre-proposals, right, as we had before. So one way of allocating it would be to divide the number of pre-proposals last time by 2 and round up.
Have 1 as a minimum.
Well, yeah, round up.
Yeah, round up, exactly.
So
So 278 divided by 2.
that's a little bit more than. It's actually going to be almost 200 pre-proposals. It's going to be almost 200 pre-proposals if we do that.
There are some institutions not on the list. Of course, they may not submit again, but just for the math, when we do the math, we have to look at all, and
Well, you know, some of these might not submit, you know, like
It's-
I was, you know, well, some of the ones with only
right.
one might not.
So I guess that's okay, because we can just say everybody has one, and the assumption is, the reasonable assumption is that some won't. Okay.
So
I'm
we still
sorry.
are going with the criterion that is 2 to 5 years into their tenure track position, right? Okay.
So
What's the total, 278?
378.
No,
270, 278.
278. So that's why I was wondering where you got your number.
Well, what?
It's 278.
Oh, this is 278.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's much less than even your 150.
But if you round up, you
So
probably
if you
will
round
cover,
up,
yeah,
yeah.
160.
If you round up, I think I think it'll be about, I thought it was 378.
You'll be
Look down
160.
here.
So
278, yes. I can see this, I can't see that. Okay, well, that's one way of doing it. And it's a simple way.
And one statistic that might be useful to collect, Dale and Reinhold, would be the number of pre-proposals each institution gets at their level. Okay, so for this round, although we won't be counting that, it'd be good to get those numbers for future years. If we try to go with allocations in the future, those internal numbers become important, because otherwise we'll be stuck with this formula forever.
Okay. Well, we may want to have them submit to us all pre-proposals and select and give us the selections, and so we know what.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And that way you'll
Very
have
good
numbers.
idea.
Yeah.
And it's some oversight that at least we have a list of.
Well, we could do a little spot checking to see how good their judgment was.
Oh,
No.
you would have to hire people.
We now trust administrators.
Yeah, another oversight is we would, so we would suggest that faculty committees, and we would receive the faculty committee rosters.
We can certainly use that for the merit review. That, you know, if there's criticism, that's another sort of way to mitigate any criticism that might emerge.
It's some oversight that that actual review took place. One item. We had a draft sentence at least, which we can look over for the final RFA, but for the energy environment topic definition, do we need a similar sentence maybe for biomedicine, so that we are not
Yeah.
that we have, from which we also can
Fundamental
craft
research, yeah.
the review criteria.
I think there are scribes working here. So, well, it was a hard struggle. It's sort of like trying to make a cover-up bathing suit out of a bikini. So thinking about the feasibility of process, the way we were talking about it.
Yes, I think it's feasible. Because we are prescribing the, so we 150 pre-proposal are 300 reviews, which means we basically need 10 reviewers, which would give us 5 experts in each area, which is a good number to get good people, I think. And they also can 5 people to look at 25 full proposals is very reasonable. So I think in terms of reviewer quality, I don't have any concerns.
But you also think that
So the 100,000 limit now makes it a little bit more attractive for reviewers to be willing to participate?
Oh, yes, that's your advice. I put that number out just to do devil's advocate for last time. I don't know how it works with overhead and whatever you were saying and whether that is a good number. I certainly can see that is. If I look at 80,000 and I see there are undergraduate or graduate students or maybe both on it, I don't see what's left for research.
That's true.
But, if you have 100, then, well, you have at least 20,000 left for research.
You want me to read this out loud? This is, Betty Sue proposes that the research topic for biomedicine be defined as basic biochemical, microbiological, physiological, and pharmacological mechanisms underlying biomedicine will be emphasized. These areas are considered absolutely essential to the understanding of the biology of health and disease and future developments in medicine. That's a little commercial at the last sentence.
Yeah. Well, that's for the benefit.
Actually, Betty Sue, one thing that you mentioned earlier was the computational perspective. And so did you want, okay, I was wondering if you want to include that, because otherwise sometimes it's precluded by reviewers if that's not in the, thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So yeah, why don't you modify that? That's good. Yeah, big data is a hard thing. So you think this is, anyway, this looks like it'll work, you think? Now, I'm sort of curious, how much does a reviewer get for a full proposal?
I forget the exact numbers. We have typically a chair, who gets a little bit more. I think. Do you remember what we paid them last time? I forget.
900.
For full and
Yeah.
pre-proposal is separate.
Maybe 600.
It's a little bit more, I think. I think it was
600 for pre-proposal. 600 for pre-proposal.
I can't remember those numbers. We can look it up if you. No, that was. I had it listed last time. Anyway, it's both pre and full proposal. It's maybe 1,500.
This is not per proposal, but per
reviewer.
Yeah.
It's a token of appreciation.
It will be.
It says here, The reviewers would get a stipend of maybe 1,000, the chair 1,200 plus travel expenses. That's what's in the summary.
Oh, okay.
That was a suggestion. I don't know whether what you did.
No, that's from, if you read it from here. Oh, from the minutes? Yes, last time we gave you that list, and so it's from that list, yes. That's merit review, sorry.
That's the merit review.
They get different. They get
That's
more.
well, actually, the merit review is less work than reviewing 25 proposals or something is a big job.
That's perhaps more important.
It's a different kind of reviewer.
Why don't we say, I don't quite like the original was good. I don't quite like the add-on because it reads basic biochemical, microbiological, physical, and pharmacological mechanisms interpreted by computational biological mechanisms.
Oh, did I say mechanism? I meant
Methods, yeah.
Because it's the complex pathways and.
Shall I type it up on the screen so
Yeah,
everybody
that would
can
be,
read it?
yeah, that would be great. And then we can tear it apart. I mean, it's just,
I was thinking.
you're not hurting my feelings by editing.
I was thinking adding just a separate sentence like the development of computational methods necessary for the interpretation of the vast amount of biological data is included.
Yeah, that would be better. Yeah. I tend to do run out sentences.
So it might be good to also just have this exchange by email. We'll finalize the verbiage.
It's bigger font. Do that. I think we're close. You've written up something for the energy and environment. Yeah, why don't you give it to him? We're getting close, and we still have a little bit of time. One of the nice things about this is that rush hour in Houston starts at 4 and lasts till 8, so it doesn't matter when I leave.
Right. Same here. 8 I-35.
Oh, you can't. I would think that you would be better off taking the MOPAC down and to the other end of town because this time of day, I-35 is a parking lot. You could go over to the toll road. You could go over to the toll road.
Oh, really?
85 miles.
I didn't know you could do that. I've been on you're talking about the one that bypasses
Yeah.
get moved? Tell me how.
You can. What's the closest way to get it? It's on 290 maybe.
Like 290.
Yeah, you just go when you go out. Go continue on 183 until you get to the 290 intersection and turn left, and it's about 5 miles or 5 to 10 miles up. 5 miles, I guess. Around so.
Goes all the way around.
No, it would be a lot more pleasant. Of course, it would cost you money.
No, that's. Right. Pays us well for this duty, right?
Don't spend overnight.
Even if it's funds out of.
We Why don't you go ahead and do the other one? We'll change this last one. So,
So while we're waiting, I do have a question. You know, we talked about focusing just on the most junior of scientists. I wonder because one thing I see in terms of NSF and NIH is that, NSF in particular, is that often people may get that initial award, but then when it's time to renewal, they're not getting the renewals. So a lot of the early mid-career people are losing out. And so I'm wondering if we should perhaps think about this in terms of expanding to associate professors as well, or going to people perhaps through year 8 or something along those lines. Just a thought. I know some universities have also had not been hiring as many people lately in the STEM, well, in any areas, especially STEM. And so I also wonder, certainly we're going to have less applications because of that, but I wonder if we expand, we would get a stronger pool if we just expand by a few years. Just a thought.
well, so they're applying, they're writing their pre-proposal now, and they would have to have been here 2 years at the time they write the pre-proposal. They actually get the money another year from that. So they're starting their 3rd year, and that's when they're really desperate. And so that actually takes them through their 6th year. I mean, in terms, you know, they would, if they applied in their 5th year, beginning of their 5th year, they would actually get the money in their 6th year. I mean, I thought about that. The really hard times are, they get pretty big startup money, but the really hard times are like year 4, and you know, they either, any of the earlier grants are gone.
Oh, no, I realize that, but also some of them are really hitting hard times. They may get, you know, the federal funding in year 3, year 4, and then they're hitting hard times year 7 and 8. And so that's why I'm suggesting that perhaps we extend this to folks from years 2 through 8, something along those lines.
Well, they don't. We should, we really ought to think about that, because I don't necessarily want to go to year 8, but it's getting now that people don't get tenure until really the beginning of year 7, and so you could. Certainly possible. I'm certainly agreeable to the notion of 2 to 6, because but still keeping it for non-tenured people. I don't think there are many people that if the people that get tenure in 3 or 4 years are not going to be hurting for money. So.
I wish that were the case, but I've seen many people receive NSF Career Awards in year 3 or 4 and then not get renewals after that, even though they've done dynamic work. And I've been actually on some NSF panels where, like field-specific ones, where 43, 50 proposals may come in, and most of the people have had funding, and they fund 6 or 7 of them. And so a lot of mid-career people, the senior people are getting the funding, some of the junior people are, but it's the early mid-career people are really having some struggles as well.
I was saying that when my remark was that the people who have tenure after 3 or 4 years usually are so hot that they don't have much trouble getting funding. So but I mean, you could extend it. I would think we should go to 2 to 6 years myself. I don't, that's not as far as you want to go, but that's really those years 4 to 7 or 8 are tough years, and if they apply to year 6, that takes them, they don't get the money till year 7. So that really is going pretty close to what you want, I think.
But you still.
I still like non-tenured.
Tenure track, Mark.
Because I think that typically people that get tenure before that time are usually in fairly good shape financially. Okay.
Is there a way to sort of address the population that you're talking about? Which I really feel like that's there are all kinds of vehicles for young faculty to make it to tenure, and then what?
Yeah.
Right? and then they become career associate professors, and that's.
Well, unfortunately, getting a little more money is not going to help them, I fear. I don't know what. You don't have sufficient peer pressure.
No, it's not for the lack of good ideas. I think it's just the pressures of 8 and 10% funding, where the senior established researchers get a lot of it, and then you have the junior faculty who are being promoted, and rightfully so, because we want to encourage more people into this field. But in between, it is a challenge. It does break a lot of people, and a lot of people do leave science because of that. And we've seen that, and increasingly, it's being seen in the case of women leaving science. That is the biggest issue: is that lack of funding at the mid-career level. So. And there's some interesting research that's ongoing with that whole aspect. So it is an important problem. I don't want to minimize that at all, but I think we need to find a mechanism to sort of address those, and not the superstars, who made tenure in 3 years, have money coming out of their years, and yet wanting to get this 100K because it's prestigious. So I think that's really the tug of war that Bob's going through is. We open up the doors, we'll probably end up funding some of these superstars another 100K when they probably have several million in their research portfolio already. So,
all right, I'm listening, but not listening.
I know.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know. This is the problem of the challenges of people who get tenure and don't seem to be able to get funding is a serious problem. And I don't know what's, I think that you can't, the problem is that there are going to be people who have tenure or getting substantial funding, and we're sort of trying to rule them out of the equation.
Right. Exactly.
Without actually saying, you have too much funding, therefore you can't apply.
Right. And yet you're a superstar, right? And yet you're a star that we would like to support. So that's where I think finding the right criteria is a challenge for that. But I don't think we want to quit on that. I think it's still a very important thing that we need to address.
He's working on it.
He's writing the whole RFA here now.
Reinhold, you forgot a verb in the research.
Okay. Good. That's good.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, now,
I saw that. Yeah, I've been watching you.
All right. Now, what I would change on the computational biological thing, I would put a comma there instead of as well as. And through the development of computational methods for the interpretation of biological data is probably more accurately what we want. Through development of computational methods for interpreting biological data. I mean, they have big data in a way that you can't imagine.
But actually, I mean, some of the fundamental research can be done computationally too, and I think we shouldn't rule that out. The study of the mechanisms and all that.
Well,
so
okay.
not just the development of the tools, but.
through development of computational biological methods for advancing the field. How about that?
As long as I don't want the fundamental computational research in terms of the mechanism end of it to be ruled out. So I'm thrilled about the development part, but also I want the other.
And through development computational biological methods for advancing the field. It's advancing, that's fine.
Or advancing the field.
Yeah, for advancing the field is.
Solicit or something like that.
Okay, so let me see.
Should it be as well as through? Because aren't we making all of this sort of level and equal? It can be a computational biological project all by itself. It doesn't have to be linked to something, right? Okay. Good. I like that.
Otherwise, you're going to have people trying to be everything
That's
under
right.
the sun.
That's right.
Biologists, microbiologists. So do we want to say anything about genetics or proteomics or metabolics or anything like that there? Or
Well,
that's what the computational biological methods are going to encompass. If we want to say that, we can. It would be more fill it out.
Well, you could. I've never understood exactly the difference between biochemistry and molecular biology, but you could.
There's a history. I can tell you that over beer one day.
How about cell biology? You want us to put cell biology in there?
Well, fundamental. I mean, cell biology is really another tier, sort of a hierarchy, I think, of all these things.
Well, cell biology,
and all these things are basic to understand cell biology.
Well, yeah,
and that's why you need the computational, because we don't know how all these metabolites interact with each other and the signaling molecules do, and they're just umpteen million pathways.
Cell biology includes the function of the organelles.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know.
You can put it in there if you want. It's
The operation of the molecular
you,
motors. The operation of molecular motors.
Yeah.
The active elements of the membranes. I think you probably want cell biology myself.
Okay, put it in there. Stick it up there.
For biochemistry.
Biochemistry, cell biology. I know. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because fundamental mechanism says it, doesn't it? Like,
looks good.
okay.
So do we want to say non-cancer related or do we not want to?
I don't think you need to say that.
I think that's okay. That's a clear charge that we don't want translational research, I think.
Yeah.
The last bastion of basic research.
One thing which was very hard last time is to find reviewers, are you cancer related? Are you not cancer related? Yes, of course I am, I know about the other things, and for a non-biologist, it's very difficult to parse out.
This is really, the situation with respect to cancer, of course, is that the multitude of diseases, which occasionally share some common characteristics, that never going to be solved medically without fundamental advances along these lines. So I think we may have finished item F.
Right, I think so too, except what's on my mind is you were talking about reviewer instructions. Is this good enough as reviewer instruction as well?
Well, I mean,
Or do you want to flesh out some evaluation criteria? That's a summary.
It summarizes it, but
Yeah,
the
but we need some evaluative criteria.
there are some
quantitative measure.
there are some criteria somewhere. I saw.
The criteria which are in the handouts are those from the last competition.
Evaluation criterion, page F2, bottom.
And they are separated between general evaluation components, pre-proposal evaluation, and full proposal evaluation.
Well, I like the general evaluation components quite well. I don't think there's anything wrong with those. The one problem that I've had on panels, and I think maybe many other people have had on panels, is that you get a proposal that looks like great science, but it's really not directed at the research topic that it was submitted into. And, you know, I think that the only response to that is, well, gee, that's too bad. You know, it seems like a good proposal. Maybe you can find a good place to send it.
I think we have to be somewhat. It's painful to tell the PIs that, but we have to, I think.
So I don't know how you would include that in the.
That would go under the proposal evaluation, right?
Yeah.
It's more specific,
I think
because everything else
these
is
are.
kind of
Maybe you should just add.
pertinence to the area of,
Maybe you should make it 5 general evaluation components, and say put somewhere. I hate to put it number 1, but you might as well relevance to the request for proposals. So under 7 ACORP 2011,
Okay.
it would be 2013.
So it would be another check mark bullet,
Yeah,
and you would call it
relevance to the request for proposals. Yeah.
relevance for research. What did we call it? Research area or research?
Relevance to the
To the RFA.
this,
To the RFA?
no. Just you know, I mean, so that they would know, they wouldn't have to stare at this proposal and say, this is great science. I wonder why we can't, you know, we should be able to fund it. It's, you know, it's.
now, is there something that you want to put in here? That's what we've put in the general.
Well, you might want
The
to,
basic mechanism, basic stuff, because this is going to be.
yeah, you might reiterate under that check mark. These are the, you know, this is what they are. This is what the relevant stuff is, yeah.
Yeah,
Just introduction.
yes.
Yeah. Just include that here so they don't have to,
Okay.
so that they know what we mean by relevant to the research area. Okay, so now we might be, are we ready for G now, or we still have something on that?
Well, I let you decide.
Well, I
You
think
you
we've
have-
done everything on F that, we've done the hard job anyway.
We'll put this together and we'll send you the draft of the RFA and you can look at it. And then if you see that we mixed up things, then we can edit it.
Well, I would be surprised if you've done that.
No, I mean, if you misunderstand some of the implications, with words or whatever in science.
Okay, so then we're going by just taking the number of pre-proposals we got last time, dividing by two and rounding up.
Right, and I will calculate that out, and that I envision it as a sheet somehow in the RFA, that everybody knows what it is, and you'll see that.
Okay.
I think we also need to make sure that we get the institutional aspect of how they're going to pre-propose.
Right, that will be a section that what they have to do for us, basically give us, their review structure.
You're going to supply them with the format that you would use, that pre-proposals would be, right? That way they can look just like what...
The evaluation criteria, yes.
So I think they will submit a single pre-proposal. Any investigator would, and then some of this will be redirected back. All of it will be redirected back to the institutions, where they go through a triage process, identify the 3 or 4 pre-proposals that then come to the coordinating board for full examination. Is that right?
That's a good way to do that, actually.
Because that way you control everything. You get everything up front. You have all the numbers. And then, because we want to make sure that those numbers get updated, right? Even though we're targeting a certain number.
Okay. Yeah, that would have to be through the online system.
Right.
And we have to see how we can implement that.
Maybe even just make PDFs of the pre-proposal, send it back to the OSP at each institution and say, here are your bunch. Now come back and review them and give us back X number.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about that, Dale?
No, I don't think so. The last time we did it that way, we gave a couple of institutions access to our pre-proposal system. So we've actually done this before.
Okay.
So their job is at the institution. Their job at the institution is to recommend a number of pre-proposals that fits their allocation.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. I think that will cause fewer complaints in a way, because everybody will not have been pre-screened by their institution. And it's not a lot of trouble to make a pre-proposal, come up with a pre-proposal. So I guess, are we now ready for G? So I don't know, you received these audits.
So we do, the grant condition requires that institutions audit their awards. Now, there's quite a bit of flexibility built in because we don't tell them when to do it. They just select, the auditing team selects their schedule and builds it in. And we have an audit guide which we update every cycle, and we're still working on that for the 2011 cycle. It should be coming out soon. And then institutions send us their audit reports on their schedule. And so since last year, we received these 6 listed here, and we keep track of them, and we look them through about audit issues. And I did not print them out. The audits reported here And then number 1, 2, and 3 had no compliance findings at all. There were some issues which were subsequently corrected according to the audit for audits 4 and 5. And one audit had found unallowable expenditures of a considerable sum, and that institution is in the process of returning it. Last time I looked was about a month ago, and that return hadn't been finished, but it was in the process. So in a nutshell, we wanted to tell you about the audits. It's not a big emphasis right now. We didn't find, according to our assessment, any significant issues except unallowable expenditures, but that's being rectified.
If these funds are returned, do they go towards future competitions? Do they go towards merit review, teacher programs? What?
We used to be able to reuse them, but we don't have UB authority anymore for this grant, and so it's going back into the big pool. We can't reuse them. And the money is not enough right now that we could do teacher programs or something what is returned. The amounts are not that big.
The only reason I ask is if we can get the actual amounts to look closer to 6 figures for the grants that we're going to offer.
Right, and we did. I mean, you may. I don't know how much you recall. We had 12 awards last time officially, but we made several awards of partial awards in October and January following the follow, and that was returned from returned funds. But the previous cycle was much bigger, so it's possible. With $1 million, there will not be that much to do much with it, what's returned. So in effect, I guess what I'm saying is if it goes back into the big state pool, it's not a big loss for us because everything is smaller.
Well, who made that decision that it would go back? I mean, that's
we don't. The legislator
fair.
made a decision that we don't have UB authority. That's my understanding. So we.
What does that mean? I don't know what that is.
It's an acronym which I always forget. Exactly, it's so easy. Unexpended balance.
Oh, balance.
And if you don't have a special wording in the appropriation, otherwise it goes away.
Well, how would the teacher thing ever be funded then?
Yeah,
We
right.
used to have UB authority every biennium, and so it was much less a problem.
Can we ask for that again?
We asked for it every year, yes. We did ask for it, but
Oh.
we didn't get it.
Okay, now, item H is actually important because if you go back to the first page, we got lots of vacancies. I don't know, do you want suggestions? I mean,
We have some suggestion
vacancies.
from last time. The reason we did not work harder on filling 2 vacancies, frankly, is that we didn't know what the funding is in the legislature, and we didn't know if we would get $1 million. So what has changed is that it's a little bit harder to do these appointments now. It used to be going from staff recommendation to the commissioner. It always goes to the commission. The commissioner makes the recommendation, and it went directly to the chair and the co-chair of the board, and they would make the appointments. Now it has to go through the full board. Not that that is any, that won't make any difference, I think, except that we have to plan much tighter, and it takes a long time because it has to go through the committee meeting and then through the board. So sometime soon this fall, we have to make the decision, and if we don't, we will look over the list, and if we need help finding people, we can come to you. Okay. But it will go to the cause committee and then to the board meeting in January. Also, the reappointments. Some of you are going to be have to be reappointed, and so we'll be in touch to see if you are still willing to do it, because if you're not, then we wouldn't suggest you again. And so we would need April, May, an ACORP meeting. Maybe we should set the date after we set the calendar for this a little bit better in stone, so that, and then we can do a doodle query. I don't think there is necessity to meet before that, because we have to go through the mechanics of the review. And then, as we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, after the review is over and the awards are giving out, we will have to do the merit review again, and that will be on the agenda for the April-May meeting. And I have hard copies of the merit review from last January.
Anybody, do you know whether Marianne is moving back?
I guess I don't understand why the vacancies on the committee can't be filled. What's the problem there?
My understanding is that we're doing this spring because we didn't know if we get funding at all.
Okay, so we can do it now.
Oh, yes, we can do it.
Okay.
Only I believe through Sunset we now have to go through the entire board with the nomination.
Okay.
So that's why it will have to be in January. And the official start date for a term is January anyway.
Okay.
So, and we have if you see the dates on the roster, they're so that there are 3-year staggered terms. So they for a couple of years they were a little bit not in line, but we now have all the ACORP member slots, if you will, are designated for 3-year staggered terms.
Well, the question comes up, my term was to have ended this year, so now I'm been elected the vice chair, so is that an automatic? I didn't even think of that. Yeah, emeritus?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
There's nothing that you can, I mean, as you full well know, you can serve multiple terms.
Yes.
So, you know, if you decide not to go again, you know, then and even if a member decides to go off in the middle of a term for whatever reason, that's all possible, you know, then we would appoint a new member, since they're staggered terms now, for a portion of the time.
I think that I gather that you'd be I gather you'd be willing to serve for another term. Is that right?
Yeah.
You don't have to make the decision right now. If any of you doesn't, then all you do is you call me, and then.
Going back to something that's there in the merit review here, it's on page 3. It talks about the graduate student tuition aspect. that is disallowed in the NHARP, the way we set it up, and most institutions don't offer it. Should we address that issue? Because that seems to be a significant complaint for some of these investigators.
I wonder what which were the specific institutions that.
They were UT, A&M, I think UH was there. And it's a fair representation of who
What I remember is the problem was with fringe benefits. That is, I think that most institutions waiving a graduate tuition is not an actual out-of-pocket expense, but waiving the fringe benefits is an out-of-pocket expense, and the fringe benefits have been fairly substantial, right? They're 15% or something like that of the stipend.
Actually, unfortunately, many of the universities on that list do not provide tuition in some areas, so it's kind of dated, but unfortunately that's the case.
It's very few institutions now provide. In fact, I just recently wrote a proposal with somebody at UT. They actually explicitly asked for tuition in their budget. So it's even UT Austin is asking.
Oh yes, I mean at Rice, if you want to submit a proposal to NSF, you have to put in an amount that's in lieu of tuition, but there's a difference. I mean, they don't like to waive tuitions. I mean, the people at Rice don't like to waive tuitions, but they don't like to see the money leave the institution either. So generally, after whining a little bit, at Rice, they will waive the graduate tuition.
Other universities are less forthcoming to do that. So unfortunately,
well, if you want to be Tier 1, it's all you have to remind them.
You keep reminding them. But it is a matter. I think it is something that perhaps we should address in what we do, and this is maybe just a bureaucratic detail that we need to address.
Well, there is some bureaucratic reason that this doesn't work, which I have not understood and probably not looked into to understand yet. So I have to educate myself again about it.
That's the only one of all the complaints. That's one thing that we could address, and that's why I'm raising it. Obviously, it's too little money for too many applicants, high quality, all that stuff is there. But those are issues that I don't think we can address. This is the one thing that I think we could.
But there is.
Let's take a look at it. So,
well, if it were allowed with the amount of money that we're giving, I mean, how much of a slice does that take out of the actual research dollars? And I mean, we're supporting research. We're not supporting salaries.
The reason is not that we don't like it. The reason is some obstacle, and I don't recall the obstacle.
Some arcane
Do you recall
thing.
the obstacle there?
I don't think we can use this pot of money for tuition. I just think it's not allowed.
Yeah, some kind of flavor of money obstacle, probably. The state doesn't like to pay its own income or something.
As I said, I heard it more about fringe benefits than the actual tuition. I don't. As I said, at Rice, it's, we don't want to do this, but after we complain about it, we will. Well, I guess we managed to get through this agenda. I'm glad there weren't more items.
Okay, it's 3:01. I guess we have to have a motion to adjourn.
Accepted.
Everybody who's in favor, leave.